and welcome to Discovering the MCU. This one's been a long time coming. This is episode number 19, where we tackle the incredible Avengers Infinity War. I am Pat. I am your MCU noob du jour, and I'm here with my good buddy Bryan, and also a special guest.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Bryan is not an MCU noob, and also Andy Gillund is our good friend. He's been a fan of the podcast pretty much from the jump, and way more knowledgeable than me on MCU stuff, much closer to Bryan's PhD level knowledge. Bryan, what's up, my friend? It's been a hot minute.
Yep. Some of the finer things in life are worth waiting for, and this episode is definitely that. And we've been wanting to get Andy in here for quite a while, but what better movie to bring him in than Infinity War, considered by many to be the best, the crown jewel of the MCU. I won't go there, but it is, either way, it is an absolutely fantastic movie. This is from 2018, so 5 years ago. This was directed by the Russo brothers, Anthony and Joe Russo, who at this point have done 2 Captain America movies in the MCU. So this is their third installment. They did Captain America: The Winter Soldier and Captain America: Civil War, 2 fantastic movies in my estimation. This movie, and they're also well known for really TV stuff. Community and Arrested Development were they factored heavily into those beauties, which were fantastic properties. This movie did $2.05 billion at the box office, and it has an 85% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is pretty freaking good for an MCU movie. At this point, we're gonna, we usually talk about prior familiarity with the material. Pat and I do. Pat, at this point, all these, the characters in this movie are characters that we've been watching through these films. So Pat, you have prior familiarity with all of them. So there's really no new characters to talk about in terms of source material, comics, and whatnot. But Andy, we'll turn to you and find out just a little bit about your background before we get underway. What's your background both with the MCU, with the films, and with comic source material with all these Avengers characters?
Sure. Thanks for having me again. I have been a MCU fan since the get-go in 2008. Obviously, we didn't know what it was going to become in 2008, but I remember going to see Iron Man and really enjoying it. And, they started to come out, and I kept watching them and realized this is pretty cool what they're doing here. And I was hooked, and I watched them all, religiously ever since. My comic book knowledge isn't quite as extensive. I did collect comics as a kid. My neighbor and I both collected comics. We'd go down to the comic store, and I didn't know much about them. I just picked the ones that had the cool covers, and seemed cool. I actually found my comic book collection a couple weeks ago. My sisters and I went home to help clean out my mom's old house because she recently moved, and I found a box, all of my comics. And unfortunately, apparently in 97, Rubbermaid totes weren't invented yet, because I found them all in a cardboard box in a damp, dank basement, and they were all pretty much ruined, I think. I got a fan on them now, hoping to salvage them so I can see what I got, but I don't think I've got any money in my comic book collection, unfortunately. I think they're gone.
Possibly some mold, though, huh?
Probably, yeah. It was disheartening finding them right at the bottom of a cardboard box on a damp floor in the basement.
I lost a bunch of my treasures, things that I would just love to have, through
baseball cards, stuff like that.
And Dungeons and Dragons stuff, and comic books also. And my dad, we moved around, rented from year to year, changing places constantly, total chaos. And he always had storage facilities that he would rent, but then every once in a while he wouldn't pay it, and that stuff would end up on TV, So that's kind of my grudge that I didn't expect to be talking about today during this uplifting podcast.
Sorry about that.
Oh no, that's all right. Yeah, I hate the stuff that goes away.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah.
It's like you snap your fingers and half your shit just disappears, you know?
Well, when you're young, you don't take care of it.
Come on, let's get a smattering of applause for that stuff. That was fantastic. That was fantastic. All right, so should we get underway, boys?
Let's do it.
It's a pleasure to have you, Andy. Thank you for joining us. This is the first time we've ever had a guest, and you were the perfect person for this. So thank you so much for joining us.
Hope I don't disappoint.
Well, we can edit that out if you do. Yeah, Pat, we can edit him out if we need to, right? I mean,
for sure. Yeah, we can get the producer on that.
Sure. Yeah, producer.
Yeah, so far so good.
So this movie opens ominously. There's no other way to say it. You know, it's brooding music. We immediately, those of us who are paying attention to this podcast, recognize the setting. We're up in space. You may even recognize this ship. Looks Asgardian in nature. And you hear an SOS being sent out over, by someone on this Asgardian ship. And then you see a Kree cruiser, I believe they're called, but it's a Kree ship, which we last saw, I believe, in Guardians 1, which Ronan the Accuser was using. And it is just laying suppression fire down on this poor adrift Asgardian ship.
What's left of it.
And quite the opening, right? It's not... What do you guys think? I mean, it was, I just think it's a fantastic opening.
We're clearly walking in the middle of something here. It looks like as the Asgardians are fleeing what's left of, or what's not left of their homeworld, and they're possibly I feel like they're in refugee status, and Thanos and his crew has sort of caught them adrift, and he's fresh off of his pillaging of a different world to get the purple power stone. So he's already begun his quest to start collecting, and we see him in the middle of collecting stone number 2, basically, is what's happening here. And he's already got our friends in quite a pickle, and that's when we first run into him. So,
and this is, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is basically right out of the ending credits of Ragnarok.
Yes.
There's no time lapse there. You can tell the end of Ragnarok, and then you see the beginning of this. It's clear that in timeline version, that's pretty much right after they ran the credits in Ragnarok. That's what's happening.
One of the few times I think that they've really, we've had a couple of post credits that end up being scenes in a future movie, actual scenes, but this is, I think you're right, one of the first times that it really is almost like a pure continuation from the final scene into the next.
It's very Rogue One into Star Wars Episode 4, that sort of same flow in terms of things that just happened and now we're here,
Well, at least we got that out of the way.
Star Wars reference.
Star Wars reference check. 7 minutes in. That's pretty solid, Pat. I don't think you've ever done it that quick.
No, that's not what the wife says.
He's on a roll. Andy, I'm sorry. We might need to just turn this over to Pat the rest of the way.
That's fine with me. I will be a willing audience member.
Right when we had an episode where we had a third person on, and I was hoping to sit back and let the third guy carry some of the weight here.
That's early.
So keep going, Pat. Keep going. Keep talking us through this. I'm liking your vibe.
Well, I mean, Loki is obviously trying to play all sides, as he does, because he's Loki, and he's clearly full of crap, but he wants to try to appease Thanos. We're not sure if he's truly trying to appease Thanos or if he's just trying to appease Thanos by giving him the Tesseract in order to protect Thor, because by this point, Thor's talking a big game, but he's got Thor locked up in a death grip full of old and twisted metal. Loki's pretty helpless at this point. And Ebony Maw's up in the place. He looks like an old Voldemort Sith Lord, and he's kind of, regulating stuff too. He has force using abilities. And between him and Thanos, they're kind of an unbeatable duo. And Loki decides he's going to cave and give up the Tesseract, which he's been hiding on his person the whole time. They tried to lie about it, but Thanos ain't buying it. So Loki produces the Tesseract, hoping this would possibly get Thanos to leave and leave them alone.
And he says in the process, well, after he's mansplained genocide to everybody, he says, what a tool this guy is. He says we have a Hulk. It's going to be okay because we have a Hulk.
That's right.
Dude,
he does say
that
that.
That was the first holy crap moment of this movie, is when Hulk comes in from the side of the screen and just
it was right there for me with his Ragnarok entrance, because in Ragnarok I had no idea we were going to get a Hulk, and we instantly get a Hulk here. Yeah,
right. That was
and
awesome.
Ebony Maw kind of just says, "Oh, just let him have his fun," as if to say, Thanos is going to smoke him anyway. So he kind of lets Hulk punch himself out, and
Hulk makes a sound that like a whimpering dog makes when it gets smacked.
Yeah.
That was like, okay, wow. And we're not used to seeing Hulk get dealt with. Hulk up to this point has dealt with anything that he wants to when he's in full Hulk mode. And Thanos, with just two stones at this point, or did he fight him with one stone?
Fight him with one, I think. He got
I don't even think he had the second one quite yet.
Yeah, he handles him. I mean, it's a fight, but this scene, I think, right at this point, it's establishing the threat. Yes. They needed to very quickly say, okay, this is a big enough threat that all of these heroes that are going to be in this movie can't take this guy down. So I think that was a huge part of it, but it also is just great scene. I love this scene. I love it.
Yeah, we get Heimdall too. He's part of this whole thing.
Yeah, this guy's beaten
very short while.
Heimdall, Loki, and Thor simultaneously, and then add a Hulk in. And when those four can't handle somebody, then geez, Yeah,
it was a pretty one-sided affair.
So then Loki, the Hulk move doesn't work, but Heimdall zaps Hulk off screen thanks to the rainbow.
He sort of tosses him into the Bifrost just to get him out of there, like a pigeon, like a carrier pigeon almost.
Yeah, he's trying to reserve a piece for the puzzle later, which was a smart move, and also get out word maybe. Hulk's not the best carrier pigeon.
I had made a note of this. I've always wondered, and I'm not one to, why did they choose this person? Because the movie could have been different, because that's a rabbit hole I don't want to go down. But why Hulk? I've always wondered that. Why, out of the people on the ship, why not Thor? Why not Loki? Why did he send Hulk? And I guess there's limited options, but I've always been curious why Hulk was the one that Heimdall chose. I don't know.
I never really thought of that.
He's the only Earthling in the lot. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. And I know it's, just to advance the movie, and that's how they wrote it. But just when you think about it, like, I wonder why Hulk was the one and not Thor, for instance. So,
well, Thor was bound up, and
true.
At that point, he had the mouth, the weird S&M device on his mouth, and I think if him showing up on Earth like that might have turned a few heads, but I don't know. There probably isn't much rhyme or reason to it. So there's also, I think, very important work going on in this scene, emotional work that's establishing the Thor-Loki relationship. We see Loki now, he says that I'm not Asgardian, but he also announces that he's son of Odinson, that he's Loki Odinson. And there's a lot of eye contact, and it's kind of I feel like it's a great redemption scene for Loki here as he's about to die. What'd you guys think of that part?
I also sort of, that's the scene I looked at as sort of him kind of trying to weasel his way out of the situation by just talking out his butt. I do see it as a little endearing as well, because I'm sure he meant exactly what he said. But Loki being what he is, I also think maybe he had a little bit of a self-preservation ambitions with that whole spiel as well.
I think his intentions were good there. I mean, he looks at Thor and says, "The sun will shine on us again," I believe.
Yeah.
So I think, and then, he produces the dagger behind his back to, try to get out of it. I think that was good intentions as far as not just saving his own ass, but, doing a good deed and trying to save everyone on that ship. But yeah, it definitely was a good moment between Thor and him. And then, a very startling, because there hasn't been too many deaths up until that point, and Loki getting snuffed out was definitely kind of moving that early in the movie too.
His limp body at the moment of the snap is pretty gross.
Yeah,
Right.
just chokes him out slowly and just throws him right at Thor's feet. Thor can't do a damn thing about it. That was
Loki's final words to him were, "You will never be a god," which I think was kind of prescient. And so I love this scene. I think right now I can't think of a better opening to a Marvel movie than this scene. And then anything else you guys want to add on this scene before we move on?
The one of many one-liners and just funny moments that I really enjoyed is after Thanos does his whole spiel and talks at them for a while, and Thor, in the death grip headlock, just mutters, "You talk too much," and that made me laugh. So he establishes right out of the gate he's still funny Thor that we saw in Ragnarok. That's not changing.
That's
Nope.
true. Tonally very important, because I think Thor really went a notch up after Ragnarok. So
Yep.
I agree with you there. So then the ship breaks apart. It's Doom. As who we don't know. We the viewers don't know what the future of Asgard is. And it's pretty bleak. And then we have our first of many cuts in this movie. We're going to be jumping around from crew to crew. And we see Strange and Wong in New York City. They're in the Sanctum Sanctorum, which is the New York City outpost for the Sorcerer Supreme. And they're, doing something on a stairway. And all of a sudden, we see where Hulk got sent.
Yeah, he comes flying out of the Bifrost, straight through the building and right through the set of stairs they're crashing on. It was awesome. I love seeing Hulk just fly through space, just hilariously. Every movie he's in, there's a scene of Hulk just getting sent through the air,
And when he arrived, Wong and Strange were walking down the stairs, and Strange had just told Wong he was going to ask the deli for a metaphysical ham on rye because Wong has no money. And he wants Strange to foot the bill for a tuna melt. I think he wanted, yeah. So,
you guys like tuna melts?
I love tuna melts. Yeah, I would eat a tuna melt.
I have a pretty strong make-at-home tuna melt game. I make a pretty good mayonnaise-based tuna salad. That's crucial. You cannot use Miracle Whip. If you do, we're done. You vary everything else, but go err on simplicity. Just a little bit of crunch, not too much. We're not putting grapes in there for a tuna melt. Maybe for some sort of fork tuna salad, we're doing that. But for a tuna melt, pretty simple. I maybe put more mayo than the average guy, but I make a great tuna melt. In fact, I might make that for lunch when we're done with this.
Damn.
That sounds good.
One might argue a little bit of excess mayo might be what makes the tuna melt great.
Yeah, I agree. You don't want that thing dry, even if you're making up for it with cheese melt,
Right.
You don't even need cheese, a true tuna melt. And one thing before we turn this into a tuna melt podcast, go to Coastal Seafood sometime. They have the best tuna melt I've ever eaten in my 44 years on Earth. It's fantastic. Coastal Seafoods.
Did you say you don't need cheese on a tuna melt? That's the whole reason it's called a melt. The only way
I thought I heard the same thing.
The only way a sandwich is a melt is if there's a slice, if it's a grilled cheese with something else added.
But I'm going back to the Coastal one. I don't even think it has cheese on it. It's just that good.
It's just hot tuna.
Go it.
So it's
Go
a panini.
Try it. Try it. Trust me. You'll never have a better one.
All right. Listeners, there are
Coastal
at least two.
Seafoods.
And we'd like to, this is a good time as any to introduce our new sponsor, Coastal Seafoods. There's 2 locations in the metro area, one on Snelling Avenue, just south of Grand, and one somewhere in the East Metro, I believe Minneapolis, off of Cedar.
Yeah, it's by the whiskey, not the whiskey, that biker bar right in the middle there, right off of Cedar. I can't think of the name of it, but
Doom, doom, doom. That's Coastal Seafood. If it smells like fish, you got a dish. If it smells like cologne, please leave it alone.
I'm still processing those words.
and that's a wrap.
I'm going to be processing those words for a while. Holy crap. Okay. So Strange and Wong, Hulk comes crashing through. He's turning into Banner, so they kind of know who he is. Although, have they ever met? I don't think they have. Oh, yeah. No, they haven't on screen. So this is the first of many interactions.
There was a lot of who the hell are you going on in this movie.
Yeah.
So good. That's part of what I loved. It was like ultimate team up, weird interactions.
Worlds colliding.
And he
Literally,
says, he's
in this
coming.
case.
He's coming. Thanos is coming. And one of the wizards says, who? Then we cut to another part of New York City. We're in some sort of park. We have Pepper and Tony talking.
It made my heart feel good to see Pepper.
Yeah. I mean, we've got Pepper in this movie also. So far, we've got a bunch of Asgardians. We got a bunch of new characters who are henchmen for Thanos. We got Thanos actually in the movie as opposed to post-credit nonsense. And we got a couple wizards. And now we got Pepper and Tony. This movie in the first 20 minutes is just throwing characters at us.
Now Tony's talking about putting a baby in her. And they're going to settle down. And Pepper really wants Tony to drop this Avengers crap. That's for damn sure.
Yes.
She makes a point of telling him that.
And so it's some establishing. I think this scene establishes that the relationship with Pepper and Tony has advanced quite a bit since the last time we saw them on screen.
Possible wedding bells here.
Yep. They're definite wedding bells. I think that's more than alluded to.
Yes.
But then Strange and Wong show up through a portal. And
more who the hell are you?
Great scene. What are you guys thinking of this?
Yeah. Strange comes through and says, Tony or Mr. Stark or Tony, we need your help. And Tony's like, who the hell are you? But then Bruce comes through the portal and he's looking like he's about to cry. And, and they haven't seen Bruce for a while. And then, he hugs Pepper and then it segues to Tony taking that invitation through the magical hole that just appeared back to the sanctum.
Yes, they do. And then we get a scene where they are, more banter, more back and forth. Tony and Strange are just two egos colliding, and it's fantastic.
It's hilarious.
Big time. So good. That's
some
one of my notes.
When Strange calls Stark a douche. That's one of my favorite. Calls him a douchebag or something like that.
And we get one of your favorite things, Pat, which you always point out. So I'm sorry I'm stepping on your touchdown call here, perhaps. But we get Wong describing to Tony what the Infinity Stones are, but it's also a very nice summary / exposition for us, the viewer, about what they are. And they give more information. Like they talk about how these were around at the beginning of the universe, and we get a lot of info. And should we name the stones? I'm really bad at knowing which one's which.
This is the first movie where we're bringing them all together as a happy family. And like you say, I love it when Marvel gives us the layperson recaps that are done so creatively and they blend in seamlessly through the movie so that noobs like me can grasp what's happening. I appreciate it.
Andy, are you a Infinity Stone? Like, up to this
So-
point, were you tracking which was which, or were you sort of like happy to learn this too?
Trying. I mean, through now, you know of them all now. But it's hard, and it still is, and I've seen these movies so many times, to remember which one is which and which one came from where. Honestly,
Same.
it's still confusing. Like, sometimes I'll Google it, like, which one came from here? Who found this one? Because it just,
I confused the Tesseract, because the Tesseract had a separate name, and I always confuse whether it's the power or the space. I'm still not sure, really. I think it's the Space Stone, but maybe it's the Power Stone.
No, I think it's the Space Stone is the Tesseract. I think you're right. Because the Power Stone is the one that Thanos got first, and that was on Xandar.
Oh, right.
So, yeah.
I actually did a little bit of reading just before this as to like why we didn't see him get that stone first, and I guess they just came down and I think it was the Russo brothers maybe even that said it was just way too much for one movie. They had to cut something out. Something had to leave the cutting room floor, and it was him acquiring that first stone that they didn't actually put in the movie. Because I was sort of confused myself. I was looking it up. I was like, did Thanos get the stone in like another movie? And I just don't remember. They're like, no, in the original version of the movie, he does get it in this movie. They just didn't put it in the movie. So he's already gotten it by the time you see him in this one.
It probably would have involved a lot more actors. You know, we had John C. Reilly, Glenn Close,
Glenn Close,
yeah. So
the Nova Prime or the Nova or whatever those folks are.
Nova Corps.
And I think
Nova
they
Corps.
backed off because there's a character called Nova who is a big Marvel property, and I think the next time we see Xandar, it's going to involve that character, and I don't think they were ready to introduce that character. That's my guess, but I also agree. I mean, it would have just been another huge thing, and this movie was already epic. So yeah,
Right.
So we have the Space Stone, Reality Stone, Soul Stone, Mind Stone, Time Stone, and Power Stone. Time Stone, we learn, is embedded in the I'm blanking on its name. What's the name? The Eye of Agamotto. That's what he has around his neck.
Doctor
His
Strange,
necklace.
yes.
Yeah.
Yep. It's called the Eye of Agamotto, which in the comics isn't an Infinity Stone. So it's kind of a fun, it's like its own artifact. But at least I think so. But so we get some learning. We get some fantastic banter. I love when one of my favorites was when Tony said, "I'm going to allow that." To Wong, and the thing that a lot of we're learning that Thanos needs all six, and that we have the ability to prevent him from getting one or two. And so Tony immediately is saying, "Hey, why don't we just destroy this one?" And Strange gets pretty weird about that.
He's very protective of it. Yeah,
Yes.
he says it's my job to protect this thing, not destroy it. So if you're not going to help me protect this thing, what are we doing here?
And that's where he says, and Stark says, what is your job exactly? And Strange says, protect your ass, douchebag, or protect your reality, douchebag. So that's where that comes in.
Yep. Yeah.
And we also, I think, learned definitively that the stone in Vision's forehead is the Mind Stone.
Yes.
We also know that to be on Earth, but there has been a secret Avengers plot going on that we've never seen really. I'll talk about that later in Easter eggs, but they decide to seek that out, and they're like, how do we find Vision? And somebody says Steve Rogers. Then Banner learns. Banner's been off world for so long, and we, the viewer, are just realizing this, and he's learning that Civil War happened because he was one of the key characters gone for all of that. So
that's right. He disappeared on the Quinjet at the end of that one, didn't he?
Yep. Yeah, he's been gone for quite a while.
Yeah.
And
no, he disappeared on the Quinjet at the end of Age of Ultron.
Ultron,
it was Ultron. Okay.
Yeah, before Civil War. He was not even in that. He didn't factor in.
And we didn't see Hulk again till Ragnarok, basically, then, right?
Yep.
So they start to, there's more back and forth. They start to hear chaos. Strange's hair does a little weird thing. And then they emerge, they go out onto the streets of New York, and what do they see?
You ever seen a grown man naked?
A giant ring
flying-
spaceship in the streets. Yeah.
Giant flying donut. I think
That's what
someone
we'll go with.
references at one point as a donut.
I think it's cool watching it sort of hover over the streets. It kind of gave me sort of Cloverfield vibes. I don't know if you remember that
Right.
movie.
I do. I don't think I ever saw it, but I know exactly what you're referencing. But yeah, it's definitely ominous.
It's mayhem in the
Um,
streets of NYC.
Yeah, it's definitely an ominous sight. And yeah, right before they went outside, and Stark tells Bruce, like, yeah, the Avengers aren't a thing anymore. We broke up. And Banner's like, broke up? Like a band? Like the Beatles? And that made me laugh pretty hard too.
Then we
That was good.
so we establish chaos on the streets of New York. Aliens have arrived, and then we cut to another part of New York City. It's kind of handy that so many characters are in New York City.
It really
Um,
is.
And we have none other than Peter Parker on a school bus, and we
Field
see his.
trip.
We get our first Spidey sense, Spidey tingle of him.
Peter Tingle.
Peter Tingle, yeah. And that people had been kind of complaining that wasn't a part of the previous Spider-Man installment.
Well, abilities evolve, I like
Yep.
it.
Then Peter asks, what's his face? What's his buddy's name?
I don't remember his name.
Ned.
But man,
It's Ned.
Ned. He's all
He
too
asks-
eager to help.
He asks Ned for a distraction. Doesn't need it because Ned is just saying what's on his mind.
Oh my
all
God,
gonna
we're
die.
gonna die.
We're all gonna die. And then we get a Stan Lee cameo, because who's driving that bus? None other than Mr. Stan Lee himself. What's the matter with you, kid? You never seen a spaceship before?
It's a good one. It's a good
It is a
line.
good. They're all good ones.
Yeah,
This was a
that
particularly
is a
good
great
one.
one.
My personal favorite is Stan as Hef, going way back. Like
Yes, that was a
that was
great
just
one.
so perfect.
That might have even been the first Iron Man where he was half, wasn't it?
I don't know if it was that or the second. It was
But
in one of the Iron Mans.
It was early,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, we get the Stan Lee cameo. Ned has achieved success in getting the diversion because everyone's looking out one side of the bus, and Spidey slinks out the emergency door on the other side and is officially in Spidey mode, running towards danger, not away from it.
What do you think the actor who played Ned made for this appearance? This is like this is only, this is part of what I love about the MCU.
$100,000.
Yeah, I have no idea, no frame of reference. But
Yeah, to be in a
I
movie
love
for
it.
literally 20 seconds.
I love that they're willing to pay somebody who's, he's a name character, not a superstar by any means, but he's willing to appear in a movie just to push the plot that very little bit, and they're willing to pay him whatever to just have this little bitty role because it all brings the world together in a cohesive way.
Similar question, same church, different pew. What do you think Gwyneth Paltrow got paid for her 20 seconds in this movie?
Oh, she gets paid big bucks because
Right.
she's Gwyneth Paltrow.
She was in it about as long as
Yeah.
Ned was.
But
Yeah.
going back to Ned, there'd already been one Spider-Man movie? Not
Yeah.
two yet, right? One.
One.
And they already know he's a main character in that. And so they have plans for him. So I'm guessing maybe it was part of the package deal. Because some of
Yeah, a
them
lot
don't
of-
they sign on like, we'll give you X amount of dollars and we get to show you in X amount of movies if we want.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's how they've done many of the actors. It's not really happening that way anymore as much.
Package
but
deal. It was a package deal, multi-picture arrangement.
the most famous was Sebastian Stan, who plays Bucky, signing a nine picture / TV show deal when he first
Right.
came on. And at the time he was just like, okay, sweet. But yeah, they have him for 9 if they want him. So
We've seen him in probably 4, 5, 6 so far, huh?
quite a few
At this
yeah.
point, yeah.
Mhm.
Then we cut back to Strange and Stark, and they are squaring off with Ebony Maw and Cull Obsidian. Cull Obsidian's kind of a big, brutish, Thanos's Hulk, or more like Thanos's Drax kind of thing, maybe.
He's got that big axe weapon or whatever he's got there.
But Ebony Maw's a powerful. This person's got telekinesis coming out the yin yang, can just sort of move fingers and do whatever he wants. But he gets called
the Count Dooku of Marvel.
Well, Tony calls him what? What does Tony call him? Yeah,
Squidward. Because he goes, Maw's like, starts blathering on, and Stark just like, get lost, Squidward.
This is why I'm Team Stark. This is why.
we need Tony Stark to give nicknames to all new wiffle ball players. He'd do a good job.
Yes, he would.
And possibly, and so throughout all of this, we start to notice that Banner can't turn into Hulk. That despite all this chaos, he's sort of impotent, and he can't.
Yes, that's a great word.
Sorry, I gave you the old noodle stab in there.
Get Hulk up, so to speak. Yeah, it's definitely very similar to that. It's kind of like
he's trying, man. I was hoping they'd work a fart in that scene just for kicks, but they didn't. I was disappointed.
My favorite line from this whole movie is in this context. Tony's standing next to Banner.
I know what
standing next
say.
to the others,
yes.
And he says, "Come on, you're embarrassing me in front of the Wizards."
Yeah.
Which is,
come on, you're embarrassing me in front of the Wizards.
That was awesome.
It's Marvel. This whole scene, it's establishing heavy drama, and it's working. All of the fantastic, sci-fi elements are working for the viewer, but they're still making fun of themselves. It's just like it's this perfect combination of storytelling for me, and it's part of why I love these movies so much.
Yeah, for sure.
So we see a new nanotech suit. Tony has been hanging out in human form, and then all of a sudden we see clearly a new version of the suit, which is all nanotech. He mentions that the groups get split off for the fight. We have Ebony Maw and Strange battling still outside the Sanctum Sanctorum. But then back in Central Park, maybe it's Central Park, maybe it's a lesser park, we have Stark goes with Cull Obsidian, and Spidey shows up there.
Yeah.
What are you guys thinking of the scene here?
I love that he absolutely shows up with just deference, calls him Mr. Stark, just like before. And he's just like still like this starstruck kid as he kind of shows up in a way. Maybe not as starstruck, but I thought it was just cool how he just shows up with his, "Oh, hey, Mr. Stark, I was on a field trip," but he's jumping right in.
And he asks, like, "What's going on?" And Tony just breaks it down. He goes, "A spaceman arrived on Earth, and he's trying to steal a necklace from a wizard." And Peter's like, "Okay, got it."
Another perfect example of what I was just talking about, just being, willing to laugh at themselves. Because that, like in some synopsis somewhere, that's what it said,
Right, because that's what it is. I mean,
it's a great recap.
Spaceman came to steal a necklace from a wizard.
Yeah, the battle is great. Strange is putting up a good fight, but he's, Maw seems to have the upper hand. Obsidian's in for some trouble. He gets his arm chopped off in a portal.
And that scene is probably one of my favorite one-liners in the whole movie. His hand gets chopped off. It's like wrapping up that battle. And Stark says, "Wong, you're invited to my wedding."
Yep. Fantastic.
And just as a real quick aside.
Yeah.
And that's got to be one of my favorite lines in the movie because it's so random and awesome.
And Ebony Maw can't get the Eye of Agamotto off of Strange because apparently he's put some sort of enchantment on it, a very strong one, and it burns his hand, sort of like that dude from Indiana Jones when he tries to get that idol or that amulet.
Yeah.
And since he can't get the Eye of Agamotto that way, he just decides, well, I'm just going to take the whole package. So he kind of ties Strange down to a piece of street and elevates the whole thing with him tied to it. And he says, well, if I can't get the amulet here, I'm just going to take the whole package with me. And off they go, floating away.
Yeah, so they go up there. Iron Man is in pursuit. We have another brief interaction with Pepper via walkie-talkie.
Yep.
but it's also a sad moment. You can tell he's like, I'm going to space, and Stark's never been to space, so this is crazy stuff, you know.
After we just had this conversation,
right?
You know,
like,
one of those.
We're gonna do this anymore.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, we're gonna have to push that 8 p.m. reservation. She's like, no, tell me you're not in space. Yeah, I sort of am.
And Spidey was also in pursuit, but he's not equipped for, you know, high level atmosphere stuff. Tony's prepared for it though. He initiates some sort of protocol. It's funny too. What is it?
17A.
Is that it?
No.
17A.
Is it really?
Yeah, I think that it might be it, actually.
Oh.
He called 17A or A17, and all of a sudden we just see something come flying out of nowhere, just, you know, from Stark HQ or from Avengers HQ.
Yeah.
Which is not that far away because it's in upstate New York. So continuity wise,
right.
That makes
Right.
sense.
And what 17A ends up being is it just slaps right onto Spider-Man in midair, and now he's got a nanotech suit pretty similar to Stark's.
Shiny new suit, yeah. Peter actually says it smells like a new car in here after he gets equipped with
That's
it.
right, he did. That new suit smell.
Parker was in pursuit. He gets a new nanotech suit. So we have a Parker upgrade happening thanks to Tony, which is important for moving things forward. But Tony also, as part of that, has a plan to save. We're establishing that he really wants to save this kid and doesn't want him being dragged off to do what he's doing. So there's a parachute that deploys. Kid goes flying backwards, but Tony underestimates Peter's go-gettedness.
Yes.
And so Tony at this point thinks Peter's back down on Earth, but that's not how it works. Then the final part of this scene is back on Earth. Bruce and Wong, who are left behind, have a few, brief discussion. Wong says he's going to go protect a sanctum, and Banner picks up the phone, the antiquated cell phone, to call Steve. So we now we cut away from New York City and the alien invasion, and we hear the first few notes of one of my favorite songs, Rubber Band Man. And we are back in space, and we see, is it the Milano, or which ship is this?
Yeah, it's his.
It's the
I think
Milano?
it's the Milano. Yeah.
Well, there's another one later. I always confuse which one. We have a jovial group of Guardians of the Galaxy, which is really fun. This is the Guardians appearing in something other than a Guardians movie for the first time. And we have some sing-along going on. We have just a great look on Gamora's face. Like she's smiling. Like it's a real good vibe. She's into it. And as Andy and I were talking about off camera, Groot seems to be a little different.
Yeah, he's insolent teenager Groot, who
Rebellious
doesn't
teen.
listen to his parents, and Rocket's like yells at him a few times to quit playing his little handheld video game. It's like, stop that or I'm gonna break it. And then he says, "I am Groot," but his tone is like, and they're all like, "Whoa!" What did you just say? And
Or you
Rocket
got a
goes,
set of
"You've been a-
acorns on you, kid.
Yeah. Ever since you got a little sap in you, you've been a real d-hole." Yeah,
That's great.
I love that.
And they're responding to a distress signal. Go ahead, Pat. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, I've always loved how he can just say, "I am Groot," and everyone else in the movie knows exactly what he's saying, but we kind of don't. We just have their reactions to go by, and that's it.
And the writer's freedom to be able to, all they have to write down is "I am Groot," and then everyone can react however they want, because it means something, but none of us hear what he actually said, but everyone can react to,
Right. It's like how people know what Chewbacca's little bleats and bloop burps are, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Same concept. Yeah, that and you get to see at one point like what he's playing. It's like a little asteroids game or something similar.
It's super old school, whatever it is.
Super old school. And he's playing it the whole just like a teenager would, like not paying attention to anyone, knows in their game. And it's just like knock it off, kid. And he's just like, whatever, I'm gonna keep
I think
playing.
they run out of AA batteries in space at some point. Just legit question.
At Space Costco and got a big pack.
You got to get the 24 pack. It's worth it.
Space Costco. That's a good band name. So they're responding to a distress signal. Rocket has, visions of monetary rewards in his mind. Gamora is, they establish her as just much more, a noble actor in this point. She's, saying, let's just do it for the sake of helping people. And Quill's somewhere in between, playing both sides. But when they arrive, they find just total destruction, death, bodies floating all over the place.
Bugs on the windshield.
Something bumps into the windshield.
Something.
It's not a bug. It's not a June bug. It's a Thor.
It's not a dude. This is a man.
It's a god.
You're a dude.
Yeah. Somebody check the wipers. There's a god on the windshield.
So they bring him in, lay him down, and then some more just fantastic banter. As
this makes Stark and Strange's interactions look like kindergarten because this is next level hilarious.
Yes.
Quill's feeling very, very threatened by Thor's mere presence, both from a physical standpoint and from a gravitas standpoint.
Very, very emasculated by the new spaceman that's arrived.
Yes. Yep. And it's fantastic.
And he's talking about a Bowflex, hitting a Bowflex machine and hitting a dumbbell.
He changes the way he talks.
You're getting on, and Rocket says, "Who are you kidding, Quill? You're one sandwich away from fat." And he's like, "All right then. All right, I'm getting a Bowflex. I'm gonna commit. I'm gonna get some dumbbells." Like,
and then Rocket says what may be my favorite line, and it's kind of a throwaway under the breath, like, you're invited to my wedding. He says, you can't eat a dumbbell, right? Which
I don't think I've ever heard that.
Yeah, Rocket says that. Rocket says it under his breath right after the word dumbbell gets said. He says, you can't eat a dumbbell, right? One of my favorites. And Quill, the actor, has put on a little weight. He's not like to do the first. And so I've often wondered if this was partly just sort of riffing. If it was like Dave Bautista kind of messing with him, because in the first Guardians, Chris Pratt is he got
ripped, didn't he?
He got ripped, yeah, more than he was for playing Scott Hatterberg.
Yeah. And Pratt's been kind of up and down and weight-wise over his career, hasn't he?
Andy Dwyer, and he was a doughy boy when he was Andy Dwyer.
Was very Andy Dwyer could only be a doughy boy.
I mean, it's funny for me to be calling him, not fit in this role, but compared to his previous appearances with the Guardians, it was a little, he's looking a little doughy. One thing on just jumping out of the plot for a second, I wanted to run by you guys. I don't know the answer to this. I've never researched it, but this is the first time that the written, we're all in love with the writing or the improv, whatever it is. The banter in this movie is fantastic. And this, as you just said, Pat, this Guardians banter around the table, around the god, and pushing forward is fantastic. And the Guardians have been completely James Gunn's baby. He wrote and directed the two Guardians movies. He really took these characters and gave them their comic. They're much different than their comic presentations and comic books. Not that anybody ever read Guardians comics, but it's really James Gunn's babies. And so now the Russo brothers and the writers of this, I think it's Marcus and McFeely, who wrote this and the next Avengers movie. I've often wondered if James Gunn had like input, or if they just were able to capture this tone perfectly from previous movies and write the characters in a seamless way. You know what I'm talking about?
You'd think it'd be less work that way. You've already got your attributes and the pros and cons of each character established over 2 movies. So it's almost like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Keep that
but
same.
They still have to
chemistry.
Somehow they have to. It's not as easy as, at least I don't think it would be as easy as we might think to be able to continue to have the proper tone. Because it's very unique. I think I give James Gunn a lot of credit for the Guardians characters personally, because they could have fallen flat completely.
Well, I mean, without spoiling anything, they were always comic relief movies in the whole MCU to begin with. And in this movie, even as dark of a subject matter and tone that it was, they were very much the comic relief in this movie as well, in a lot of ways.
I guess I've never looked at the credits. Is James Gunn listed as any?
Like a writer? I mean,
there's a billion people in the credits, but it wouldn't surprise me. Although in real life, when he was on the outs with Disney for a little bit for other reasons, I don't know, was that during this period? Maybe this was the period that he wasn't around. I don't remember when that happened.
Well, they certainly did not do the Guardians dirty in this movie by any stretch.
No,
it was extremely well done.
Yeah, it doesn't look like he worked on it, but they
he had to have provided some input. You would think.
Yeah, I'm just, not to be doing research in real time here during the podcast, but it looks like there's some articles about how he insisted on one thing being in Infinity War as a setup for Guardians 3. So this must have been past his persona non grata phase with Disney, because they wouldn't have even accepted his input in that regard. So I just think it's fun that Russo brothers take something that is really his and implement it into their movie, because their thing is Captain America, right? Yeah. Like that's their source material, and they just really do the Guardians justice, in my opinion, because it feels like a Guardians movie, this whole sequence. Agreed. To me.
Oh, very much so.
So then we get some more, as you said, Pat, Quill starts talking in a deep voice, funny stuff going on, because he's emasculated. We learn that the Reality Stone has been with the Collector, Benicio del Toro.
The Aether, as it was originally called, right?
Yep. Which was from Thor 2. And they're talking about, Thor says they realize they're all, needing to thwart Thanos. Thor realizes he's talking to Thanos's daughter, and he's sympathetic there rather than seeking revenge. And then they decide ultimately to split up into 2 groups, Thor and Rocket, to go to Nidavellir.
Nidavellir. And Jack says that's a made up word. Thor says all words are made up.
And Rocket is too happy to be Thor's sidekick, almost kind of giving Quill the bird on his way out too, Here's my new buddy.
And the rest of them go to nowhere, which is where the Collector in theory has the Reality Stone. So then we break from the Guardians crew, and we move to Scotland, where we have Vision and Wanda playing house.
Yeah, are they? Are we to assume? Yeah, are they sort of sneaking off here? Are they sneaking off the radar? Because I feel like this is a forbidden sort of love they've got going on here, hiding in Scotland.
Sort of, because they make reference to, I don't know if was before or after this, but they reference Vision turning off his transponder, so they don't know where he went. I think it's before, because that's when Banner says to Tony, "You lost another Superbot."
That's what I'm saying. It feels very elopey, this scene. Let's run away secretly.
Yeah.
It's not that the love is forbidden, I don't think. It's that they were supposed to be monitored. This is all in the aftermath of the Accords.
Right.
And they end up hanging with the Steve, Black Widow, Falcon crew, which is, I alluded to it earlier, but there's the Secret Avengers. It was, and they haven't referred to them as such, but that's clearly what this is all set up as. And I wouldn't be surprised someday if they go back and do a Secret Avengers thing to show what they were doing in this time period. But Wanda and Vision were with those other three, kind of not on the friendly side of government during this whole Accords period. And so they were doing Avengers stuff, but they were doing it in secret without the authority of, any sort of governmental entity. That's at least what I took from this whole structure. And they are walking down a quiet street in Scotland. They see, the classic news on in a window, of like a Macy's or something. It's not a Macy's, but
Scottish Macy's. Yeah.
Scottish Macy's, which is like 2 rooms. And
Macy's.
That's Ireland. And they see a New York City attack, and they're, oh boy, here we go. Yeah. And before we know it, this is maybe my only beef with this whole movie, is these two badasses would not just suddenly Corvus Glaive comes flying in and tackles
Vision,
right? Just and they're on a street. Like these two would have known something was coming. I found this ambush and where it took place to be distractingly awful. But once I get past that, what happens? We have 2 characters, Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight, show up to wreak havoc.
Yeah. More of Thanos is they're there to retrieve the stone out of Vision's head. They're a singular focus here.
Yep. Corvus, him and Vision go at it and wreak havoc, flying through the air and smashing through walls and kicking each other's ass. And Wanda goes full mind.
Vision gets stabbed.
Right through the chest.
He mentions pretty quickly to Wanda that whatever that blade was prevents him from phasing, which is one of Vision's most powerful powers, is the ability to...
I wondered why Vision came off so weak in this movie, honestly. Yeah. It seemed like he wasn't fighting back as hard as I think Vision could have fought back, but maybe that's why. Maybe that part eluded me.
Yeah, that these two, I had a big problem with Proxima Midnight holding off Wanda. I mean, Wanda's powers get more and more as we go along with time, but Proxima Midnight's kind of like more of a Black Widow matchup than a Wanda matchup, in my opinion. Right. And so I agree. I've been frustrated from the get-go. Vision was, as fans of the podcast will know, Vision has at times been my favorite comic book character from the comics, and total badass. Like, really, A-level powers. And they haven't really turned him loose in any, occasional scenes, but, he's crippling Rhodey in Civil War with an errant shot. He's, he's
very damsel in distress in this scene, honestly.
That's true.
I feel like, though, both of those characters, Vision and Wanda, that, like, when you rank everyone's powers and how they come across on screen, they are so powerful that how do you temper their power to make it, make the movie work? Because in theory, they could just run roughshod over everyone, movie's over. So how do you make them look powerful but still beatable, I guess? I don't know if that makes sense, but that's got to be hard to write them in, knowing they could just mow everyone down, honestly. How do you make... So, I don't know. That's how I've always thought about them.
I do feel like they take Wanda's powers up a little bit here in this, because she is doing some impressive stuff.
Yes.
She's kind of manipulating.
Yeah.
She's manipulating so that she can fly, kind of. Soft landings.
She's basically Vision's bodyguard at this point.
Yeah.
In this scene, for sure. Yeah.
Yep. So they are struggling to win this battle, the two of them, somehow against the Thanos henchmen, and they end up on a train platform. And this is,
coolest entrance.
This is my favorite scene of this movie. Yeah, I mean, this is halvesy territory for sure.
Oh yeah.
Train goes by, Proxima Midnight notices something, and there's wind changing, and
he looks up at the train. Yeah. And then
you see like the silhouette behind the train. Oh yeah.
Oh, so
the foreboding feeling.
And then
we get for a tumbleweed.
We get the first few notes of the Avengers theme song.
Yes.
And I don't even want to talk about this scene because I love it so much.
And,
you guys better talk about it.
And not only is it a badass entrance, and not only is it Steve Rogers, but it's bearded Steve Rogers, which in my opinion is the coolest Steve Rogers.
It's Secret Avengers Steve Rogers.
Bearded Steve Rogers, it's a good looking fella. Steve Rogers in a beard is a good looking fella.
Don't get Shirley started.
I'm on with Shirley's on this. Ooh, good looking fella.
Andy and I we'd go to town. We'd do whatever's necessary.
Yeah, I'm on that side.
I just love it. I love the scene, and it's it just does everything. Checks all the boxes for me.
Come in and kick ass.
And then the fight is great. We also see Black Widow's there and Falcon, so it's not just Steve. And so at this point, who's not in this movie so far? This movie is just, it's a embarrassment of riches in terms of characters, and everybody's
done yet. Yeah.
And every character is fitting their role really well, in my opinion. Fitting within a story
movie is
structure.
the all-star game, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's like an all-star game where the players care. It's like a 1978 all-star game.
Right. Pete Rose all-star game. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Pete Rose mowing over the catcher all-star game. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. We're gonna go here, I guess. It's not just the catcher. It's Ray Fosse, Oakland Athletics catcher. May he rest in peace. He died of cancer last year.
He died when Pete Rose took him out.
It did end his career. He was an all-star catcher at that time, and then he never was the same.
Wasn't he post-concussed or something like the rest of his career? Or he had shoulder problems or something like that? One of the two?
Yeah, both. All of it. And then he was kind of a dopey broadcaster because of it too, I think. But still one of my favorite he was an A's broadcaster for 25 years. So that's the reason I have added love for him. Anyway, Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame or no?
Yes.
Yeah. In the grand scheme of things, the indiscretions by players, I feel like gambling, whatever. I mean, was it ever proved that he? Well, it was, wasn't it? He bet against or for his team.
For his team.
So I mean, I think that's the lesser of two evils. If you're betting against your team and throwing games, that's one thing. You're just you believe in your team, so you're betting on him.
He's a moron with poor judgment, but god damn it, he's the hit king. He should be in there.
Yes, his numbers are ridiculous.
The last player manager.
I'm resentful towards him because he played for 5 years looking like he had no business playing baseball, looking like some sort of weird fourth member of the Three Stooges or something, weird bowl cuts, flopping around.
He did look like a stooge.
Hitting 260.
Look like a fourth stooge.
He's hitting 260 with no power. Why? Screw that guy. Screw Pete Rose.
4,000
Screw his
hits.
Gambling. That guy should not be in the Hall of Fame. However, Mark McGwire should be. Anyway, back to
let's
found the A's fan.
Back to this. This platform scene kicks butt. Oddly, adding these 3 non-superpowered characters is what turns the tide for Wanda and Vision. These 3 karate champs just beat them
Just a straight
into submission.
beatdown.
And Proxima Midnight flees to save Corvus Glaive.
Yeah.
Without the Mind Stone. They failed in their charge.
Yeah.
Yep. And then oh, well, that doesn't happen yet. I don't think they go in their ship yet. I think that just ends at that scene. And then we go to a Gamora flashback.
Yeah. No, the two villains go up to their ship, but the others, you don't see them get back on their ship yet. But
Then we move to a Gamora flashback. We have little girl Gamora. Her planet is it's in the, before Thanos got we're learning more about Thanos's motives here, right?
Yes.
Why he's doing what he's doing. He has this misguided view that, he's basically an eco warrior. He's worried about resources. He doesn't want anybody to starve. And so the best way he figures is to just cull the population by 50% everywhere he goes. Regardless of what the planet's like. So we have a scene where he and his soldiers are literally dividing out a population on Gamora's home planet. A bunch of people, whose last name starts with
who's random.
A on this side, anybody, B on this side, blah, blah, blah. And then they just kill one side. But he sees the scared girl, pulls her aside, makes her not look, and gives her this tiny knife, which is actually big for her, but tiny for him, and gives it to her to keep. And then he just sort of keeps her as a pet or a daughter.
Yeah.
And what do you guys think of this scene?
They actually humanized, it's a weird word to say, humanized Thanos in this scene in a way that actually sort of makes you like him almost just a little bit. Only because you realize he is really the origin story of Gamora is Thanos.
Yeah. And it I think it also sets the table for a scene we'll talk about later, but how he feels about Gamora. That's the start of it. The handing of the dagger, and then it flashes forward to real time, and Gamora's holding that dagger in her hand, so that's how it ties together. Personally, and I don't know why, I've never liked this scene, and I understand why it's there. It makes sense what it explains. And maybe it's just because it's been an all-star game, and it's awesome seeing group after group arrive. I feel like it kind of just slams on the brakes and then gets tucked in there, and explain, but something
it is a
about
momentum killer.
It does, because the movie is just kicking ass, and then it's like, now we're going to show little Gamora, and I don't know, something about it just I don't like, but I 100% understand why it's there, and it fits.
Is it the content of the scene or the placement of the scene?
Maybe it's the placement of the scene, but it feels like this train is rolling 1,000 miles an hour, and then it screeches to an halt, and then they throw that scene in there, and then get back to, regular scheduled programming.
Maybe that's the scene you get up and get your instant coffee.
It is. Well, after the third time I saw it in the theater, that's when I went to the bathroom if I needed to go. Was that scene?
And I think some of it is just the scene before. I don't know, Pat thought it was one of his favorite scenes, but Andy, you and I clearly both thought that was one of the best scenes, where the arrival of Cap on the train platform.
Yeah.
Oh, I loved the scene. I wouldn't say it was my favorite, but I loved it.
That was the first moment in this movie on opening night where there were audible cheers in the crowd at that. Like when the Avengers music started, the movie theater I was in on opening night had people going,
goosebumps.
And the coolest part about that, not to keep going back to it, but Proxima chucks her spear thing across Adam, and he's still in the shadow, and he just throws up an arm and bare hands that thing, and eyeballs are right back. That was definitely
as we see the beard for the first time.
I didn't stand up and cheer because I'm not a movie theater stand-up cheer guy, but in my mind, I was standing up and cheering for that because it was.
I'm a movie theater. Woo! God. That's what I do.
I love it.
I'm not a we can't even talk about it, Andy. We can't talk about it. Pat, don't you have to go to the bathroom or something? Because Andy and I want to talk about something.
No, we'll get
Is
there
there
eventually.
ever a moment later in this film series where you might have cheered out loud, or did you just sit there smiling?
There's many times. There's more than a few times. Yeah, I'm such a dork with these movies. I mean, that's been well established with you guys
But I'm
already.
saying,
But
did you
That's why
ever
we're
get
here.
moved? Did you ever actually get moved to clapping?
no, I've never
Oh, okay. All right.
I've never clapped in a movie of any kind.
And as you're thinking that nobody can hear you, and so like,
Yes,
why
it's
are
just it's if we were at a play, you clap, but it's a movie. No one can hear you clap. I've always just thought it was weird, but I understand why people do, because I mean, you get excited, you get
see?
emotion, but I draw the line before I stand up and
Stand up is a little much. I've never seen anybody stand up.
okay, not
Who's
stand
standing
up. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Here's
no,
the thing. Have you ever been in church? Have you ever been in church, first of all?
Yes, I went to a church school through 4th grade. I know that seems implausible, but I did.
I went to church school through 8th grade.
Small town
and
Minnesota. I have no doubt you did.
Yes.
So, Andy, well, Pat, here's what happens sometimes at church. Since you're such
Fill me
a,
in, because I'd be set aflame if I ever stepped into one.
here's what happens at church. At some of the churches that are more, progressive, at some point in the ceremony, what do we call it?
Sermon?
No, not in the sermon. Maybe it's in the sermon, but it's in the some point during the proceedings.
Yeah.
You might be asked to stand up and turn around and greet the people in front of you, in the pew in front of you, person to your left, person to your right, person behind.
Yep.
Sometimes I'm if I've been asked to do that, sometimes I'm like, I don't want to do this. But other times I felt the Holy Spirit flowing, baby. And you extend a hand, you shake hands with the stranger. A lot of times the person sitting to your left and right are people you came with, so that's not a big deal. But I have, extended my hand, and to me, it's sort of the same thing. It's like the movie theater version of doing that in church.
Okay, well,
it's like a way of sharing your communal experience.
Yeah,
so it's not for the producers, it's not for the actors.
Fair enough.
It's for the person next to you who might be too socially awkward to actually express their emotions.
Yeah. And
Ooh,
and
see
we
how
can
I'm sort of starting to rip on you now?
and we can take it out of church. So Pat doesn't turn into a pillar of salt as we talk about this, but same thing at a baseball game. When your team hits a home run or they win, you turn around and high five the strangers in front of you, or I get that. But again, there's a recipient to that applause in front of you. That's just my feeling. There's no recipient to the applause.
The screen is an inanimate object. The movie itself is an inanimate object.
Now, if we were at the premiere with some of the actors and, the writer in the theater, that'd be something else. That'd be cool.
Yes.
Anyway, tangent.
So after this Gamora flashback, we go back to Team Quill, which is heading to nowhere. Not figuratively, they're literally heading to nowhere. Gamora and Quill have a moment where they
very serious moment.
She talks to him about how she wants him to kill her if Thanos captures her. And the reasoning is that she knows something that he needs, and she can't give it up. And Quill's like, well, what is it? And she says, I can't tell you, because then you also would be vulnerable to it. She cries, which is the first time we've seen Gamora cry, and they kiss. And is this their first on-screen kiss? I think it is.
They've come close a couple times.
Didn't they kiss at the end of one of the Guardians movies?
I thought she smacked him. I feel like they got really close, and then she
So this is another one of my favorite for many reasons, but yeah, it shows Gamora's, vulnerability. It's a super serious topic, like, hey, boyfriend, please kill me if my crazy dad catches me. But leading into that scene, before she tells him, Peter, I want you to kill me, Peter's standing there and he just kind of looks at Gamora and says, holding some grenades in his hand and says, "Hey, Gamora, do you know if these are the blow your junk off grenades or the gas kind? So I was thinking about putting some on my belt, but if they're going to blow my junk off, I don't want to use those." And then she's like, no, dial it back. I need to tell you something super serious right now. And then out of that conversation, they're about to kiss. And then they look out of the corner of their eye, and there's Drax eating a Zarg nut. And he's like, "Dude, how long have you been standing there?" And Drax is like, "Yeah, like an hour." And he's like,
and he hasn't even broken eye contact the whole time.
And they're like, "Yeah, we can see you." And he's like, "No, I've mastered the art of being so imperceptibly slow that no one can see me." And they're like, No, we can see you." And then Mantis comes in, "Hey, Drax." And he's like, "Damn it," and walks off the screen. But I freaking love that.
Super slow eating.
Drax is such a underrated comic relief in any appearance he's in. He is freaking hilarious.
He's not underrated on this podcast. I'll tell you that right now.
He's definitely a top 5 character in my view.
Yeah. Dave Bautista crushes it with that character.
Yeah, it's I love this scene too. There's too many great scenes. I keep saying this is maybe my favorite scene, Platform Steve is my favorite scene, but this is right there.
Yeah.
And it's great because it's, there are people out there who hate this about the MCU. There's DC fans who hate that they're constantly mixing serious drama with levity.
Right.
That's, there's actually people who criticize that. It's really a foundational aspect of why I love the MCU. So
sounds like a personal problem to me.
I guess some people just want, all drama
all the time,
and dark
right.
and rain all the time. But they just they pulled it off. Like if it didn't work, it wouldn't work at all. It'd be horrible. But the moment with Quill and Gamora is very heartfelt and it works. Like the acting is top notch and the scene works. And they immediately don't let us get dragged down by that. Right away, Drax is sitting there lurking, perving out on him, and it's fantastic. And
Master
I think
the art.
Isn't this like the second or third Zargnut reference too? Like I think Zargnuts appear in each Guardians movie, and now they're showing up in this.
Yeah, it's the foodie Easter egg. They make a Zargnut call out in each film.
That's the sponsor we need. Zargnuts.
Yeah, Zargnuts. Hornuts should do a Guardians version and rebrand as Zargnuts for a week.
And cut you a check for that brilliant idea.
Right?
Holy crap. So then that scene ends. We move to nowhere where we see Thanos with the Collector. The Collector, again, Benicio del Toro, pretty sure he's an Oscar winner. And he's just here like messing around. Couple minutes on screen.
Such a good role too. Yeah,
I know, it's such a good role. I just don't know how they. I don't know how they do. It's just so freaking wonderful.
Thanos has got a boot on his throat.
Yeah, he's basically filleted in the prone position. Thanos doing whatever he wants. And the Team Quill, that's what I'm calling them, approaches this scene. And Drax, upon seeing Thanos, immediately is like, "Oh,
we'll kill him."
He's like Diego Montoya.
Right.
Prepared to
killed
die.
my family.
Yeah. Or is it Indigo Montoya? What's that guy's name? Is it Diego Montoya?
Inigo
Montoya.
Inigo Montoya. Yeah. Sorry that I botched that. Producer guy, could we edit that out? And Drax kind of is about to mess it up, and Mantis comes in, saves the day temporarily. What does she do?
Does her mind thing and makes him fall asleep briefly. Falls to the ground.
Then Gamora takes Quill tells Gamora to go left or right. She goes the other way.
No one listens to him the whole time because he throws up like the fist, the silent
to stop.
Okay,
they all
everyone
go walking
stop.
back.
And they all just keep walking past him. And then he goes, "You go left," and then they go right, and he's just like, "What the hell, guys? No one's listening to me."
They haven't taken him seriously since Thor showed up.
Absolutely not.
So Gamora attacks. Gamora launches into attack mode. Briefly, it looks like they're gonna beat him. And we get a funny shot of the Collector in one of these plastic prisons.
Magnificent. Magnificent.
That's right.
Which is pretty
she
funny.
beats him way too easy. Like it's just too easy.
Yeah, doesn't Quill like say, "Huh, that was easy," or something like that?
Yeah.
But then we very quickly realize that the Reality Stone is in play, and it's actually a much different scene on Nowhere. Much
Thanos had already
scene.
gotten it before they showed up.
Yes.
Yeah, and then he does some weird stuff with Drax and Mantis. Turns them
he turned him into like party favors and all
like
sorts of weird, like odd things.
Spiral potato and Mantis, and like, and
Spiral
then turn Drax into like cube
chunks of clay. That's what it looked like.
When I first saw that, I was grossed out. I was like, "Oh God, are they gone? Is this like the end?"
Same. I thought
it was a cool way to. That whole scene was a
dying?
cool way to flex the redstone, though.
And find out that it's not
the
real.
Reality
But
Stone.
I thought they died as well. The very first time I'm like, "Oh wow, that's bye." But turns out they aren't dead, thankfully.
And basically, Thanos, once he has Gamora, because he captures her, once he shows the reality to be different, he's holding her and she can't get away. And Thanos is playing games. He lets her and Quill have this long speech about, whether he's going to kill her.
Yeah.
Yep.
You promised.
And Thanos clearly could have been doing whatever the heck he wants, but he's just sitting back listening to this.
He's entertained.
At some point, Quill pulls the trigger to kill Gamora to save her from, whatever future awaits. And it's just a bubble gun. It's a tough, things aren't going well for Team Quill at this point.
No. And then, he opens a portal and they disappear. And
off they go.
Off they go. There goes Gamora.
Then our next cut is we see yet another character we haven't seen in this movie yet. We have Rhodey, War Machine, talking to a hologram General Ross, who we also haven't seen.
Yeah, we're back at Avengers HQ here, are we not?
Yeah.
R.I.P. to Ross in real life, right? Because that was still
William Hurt.
Yep.
He's got an upcoming movie. He's being replaced by Harrison Ford, and upcoming movie with going to be
General
President Ross.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Rhodes kind of tells Ross to piss off, more or less, right? Because I'm going to help the Avengers.
No, he doesn't. To his face, Ross, he's talking to Rhodey, and then the Secret Avengers come in, and Ross wasn't ready for that, and he tells Rhodey to arrest them all. And Rhodey says, "Yep, okay," and then he turns off the screen and doesn't have any.
He says,
plans.
"That's going to be a court-martial."
Yep.
Right. But not before Steve snaps off a pretty Steve line saying something like, "I'm not looking for forgiveness,
and we're way past permission,
and I'm way past asking permission." Yeah.
Yep. This is
so
badass,
those two
Steve.
don't like each other, I believe. That's been established.
And Steve, one of the few times he's not the rule follower because he's so by the book, and he's clearly, I don't care what you say, we're doing
he's over it now.
Yeah.
Well, Steve's been, ever since Civil War, he hasn't been a rule follower.
True. Yeah. This is just hammering it home.
So another key thing here is this is a first reunification of Banner and Nat. They see each other because when we last saw them, they had some romantic flings at Hawkeye's ranch, and they were showering together or considering showering together. They didn't. Romance was a bloom, and then at that point, Banner took off into space, and they haven't seen each other since that scene in Civil War.
Right.
And she was the one that could put him to sleep, big fella. The sun's getting low.
Yeah, the sun's getting low. That's what it is.
And we also get a little bit of exposition as everybody's getting to see each other. We learn that Clint and Scott, Ant-Man and Hawkeye, aren't in this movie because they took deals after the Sokovia Accords and are off doing family-ish stuff.
Wait,
So-
who's Ant-Man? Wait, we've got an Ant-Man and a Spider-Man? That's
Yep.
another one of my favorite lines.
And it's another self-deprecating, it's like, how ridiculous is this? So then we get serious again. Vision tells them all that the stone must be destroyed. And we get, in my view, again, this is Russo brothers. They're Captain America people, and they give Steve the line, "We don't trade lives, Vision." And it just stands in stark contrast to everything Thanos is trying to achieve. Everything he's trying to trade lives on the biggest possible scope. Also, in theory, to save lives or make quality of life better, but he's willing to wipe out half of the population in the universe to allow for nobody being hungry, nobody being overcrowded, no disease, et cetera, et cetera. So this just sets up, we've got Steve as the moral core. We don't trade lives, even though this is some android synthezoid guy. And Steve is still like, this is a life. And on the other hand, we have Thanos who's, going all in. Bruce suggests they take the stone out, and they talk about, where could that happen? Then we cut.
How can we take it out without killing him?
Yeah, his mind is made up of a construct of many things, and that's where he talks about Ultron and Jarvis and the stone, and what if the best parts of him aren't the stone? And gets a little. And then
in a bit of foreshadowing, we have yet another location in this movie and characters that we haven't seen in a little while. Actually, we've seen these characters very recently, but not in this movie.
The last episode.
Yep. We go to Wakanda. And
they play the music to foreshadow it. The distinct Wakanda Black Panther music.
They've got the technology to possibly remove the stone without killing him.
Yeah, I don't think they say that right away, but it's strongly intimated by the cutscene, by the group of them are talking about taking the stone out without killing him, and they're wondering where. And then the very next scene is we're in Wakanda, but they're not talking about the stone. They're making it clear that they've been told that there's a fight coming, and we see the Black Panther going down to some remote area where they're picking up the White Wolf, which is none other than Bucky Barnes.
Yep. Which we found out pretty much right at the end of Black Panther, right? Wasn't it one of the cutscenes?
Yeah.
Yep.
Or one of the end scenes?
Yeah, multiple cutscenes being tied in here. We've got Thor Ragnarok moving into this. We got Black Panther moving into this.
I love that they've got the road case with the arm just sitting in it.
The way they keep folding in the characters is awesome. And this is another awesome intro to a character, and it's way less over the top than others, but it's just kind of badass how they're like set it down, open the case, and all Bucky says is, "Where's the fight?" And Panther says, "It's on the way." And that's the scene, and it's super cool, and like, because that's all he's ever known is fighting. And that's how he says, like, "Where's the fight?" Doesn't even ask anything else.
Yep. So this is a very brief scene, and then we cut back to Ebony Maw's ship, which we haven't been to in a while. And we, Strange is in trouble. He's got a lot of needles pointing at him. Maw seems firmly in control.
Yes.
Yep. And then we have Spider-Man. Peter Parker pops in and surprises Tony. Tony didn't know that he was also a stowaway on this ship. And they have some moments, and they establish even more that Tony feels responsible for this kid.
Very father-son vibes.
Yes, very.
Yep. Which, it dates back to the first Spider-Man movie, but and even Civil War, really. Yeah. They are they're up in a higher vantage point. Ebony Maw, despite his powers, seems clueless that they're present. And Spidey says, "You ever see that really old movie, Aliens?"
Yeah. Awesome pop culture reference.
Stark can't stand it.
But it turns out to be a pretty good plan.
Yeah, it works. One thing I wanted to ask you guys, and it's always bothered me, this bit of dialogue, but when Tony's like, "What the hell are you doing here?" and Peter's like, "I wanted to leave, but I couldn't." And he says to Tony, "You can't be your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man if there's no neighborhood or something." And Tony's like, "That doesn't make any sense." But when you think about it, it makes total sense. He's saying, if we don't stop this, there's going to be no neighborhood for me to take care of to begin with. So that's what I'm doing. So I never understood why Tony's like, "That doesn't make any sense, kid."
Isn't Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man? Isn't Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man sort of an old Stan Lee thing from like a long time ago? Like how Spider-Man was presented? I think I think Stark just dismissing it out of hand is the joke.
Maybe that's what they were going with there. But I'm like, that. What do you mean, Tony? That makes total sense.
I don't think it's a joke. To me, that was, it makes total sense. Peter's right, but it's also a way for them to work that catchphrase in.
Right.
Because that old 70s or that old electric company thing always referred to him as a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Yep. It's a retro reference that they wanted to work in Easter eggy style, perhaps. But it's also, I think this is, there's clearly no answer to this. This is just all of our opinions. But to me, it does make perfect sense. But Tony is so committed to just wanting to protect this guy. Right. That he's like, whatever, that doesn't make any sense. Just go home. Like, you should not be here.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
That's how I took it, at least. And their plan works. They blow a hole in the side of the ship and then use Stark Tech to close it up really quick after Ebony Maw gets sucked out, and he freezes to death in deep space. So one down.
Oh.
A death befitting for a Squidward.
I'm forgetting the name of these Thanos's henchmen have some name in the comics, and I can't remember it. But
aren't they his children?
That's what they call them in movies. They call them Thanos' children, but there's a different term for them in the comics.
Okay.
And there's more of them. There's like 8.
Nebula and Gamora were Thanos' children, were they not? Same sort of way? Except they're not radicalized like the ones he's sending out to
children.
Yeah, those are actual children. Yeah, by adoption. Yeah. But he considered them his kids.
Oh, I figured Thanos could just go into a T-pose and like manifest children just by doing that.
Well, once he's got the reality stone, he can, clearly. Yeah. So they suck him out of the ship. They save Strange. Strange and Stark continue to butt heads about what they should do.
This bit of dialogue is gold as well. When Stark's basically like, they're arguing, and Tony's like, "Who just saved your magical ass?" and Doctor Strange is like, "I don't know how you fit your head in that helmet. Like, you are so arrogant that."
Great exchange.
Like,
they're the two most arrogant characters.
Oh, absolutely. They're the most alpha arrogant characters in the MCU, arguably.
Yeah. There's not enough room on that ship for those egos.
Right.
They do a good job of letting it clash. And I mean, it's just very realistic as far as any of this is realistic. It's very realistic, I think.
Yes.
And they sort of decide in this scene too, that like they've decided they're not going to sit around and let Thanos, or at least Stark, they're not going to sit around and let Thanos dictate things. They decide at this point, we got to take the fight to the guy himself.
Right. And then Peter starts talking, and this is where Peter gets introduced, and Doctor Strange is like, "Who is this kid? I'm confused here. What is he, your ward?" and then, it's like, "This is Peter," and then and Doctor Strange goes, "My name's Doctor Strange," and Peter goes, "Oh, we're using our made up names. I'm Spider-Man."
That was great.
Yeah, fantastic.
He gets to meet Capey for the first time too. I thought Spidey and Capey would get along real well.
Yeah. Yep.
Capey. I love that you call him Capey.
And it's its own character. It really is.
Yeah. What else would you call him?
Strange's cape is its own character. And at one point, Stark says to him, "Man, that is one loyal piece of outerwear." Because it keeps coming to Strange's rescue.
Yeah.
So thematically, you were just alluding to this, you guys, but Strange's instinct upon prevailing is to go back to Earth,
Right.
to get that stone, the time stone, safe. He wants to get out of there. Stark, his position is, I've been tormented by this for years since the original Battle of New York. I don't want to bring this chaos to Earth. Let's take the battle to him. And that version prevails. And Peter gets anointed an Avenger.
Yes. Yeah.
I think Stark is kind of thinking maybe we're not going to make it out of this, so I'm going to make you an Avenger, kid.
The quick knighting.
Yep.
And Peter's like, his face, that leaves that scene as the cut scene, and he just kind of like, cool. And also, this is pretty serious. We might die.
So then we move on to Thanos and Gamora on Thanos' ship. He calls her daughter. She says something like, everything I hate about myself is you, or from you, something like that.
Yeah.
He takes her to see Nebula, who he's got strung up and stretched in torture pose. And we learn that Nebula...
They did that scene real well. That little torture scene, that was very unique. I thought that one actually hit me a little bit. I was like, wow, that's some stark ass dark stuff right there. That was well done.
And yet another character introduction. We're seeing Nebula for the first time.
Right.
Who's one of my favorite characters. And I love just the development of Nebula over time is just fantastic. We can't get into that too much, but it's fantastic scene here. He's torturing her. I agree with you. It affected me as well. You really get the sense that these two daughters, daughters not by choice, have just been so abused, emotionally abused by this relationship. It's still ultimately a Disney movie, so that's not explored to the darkest depths it could have been. But these are two ultra violent women. And a lot of the source of that violence is from their upbringing at the hands of this cuckoo guy who Pat finds oddly sympathetic. You still finding him sympathetic?
No, not at this point. Just really with the origin story about how he got to acquire Gamora, I suppose. It just gave him a little bit of humanity. But I'm certainly not going to be a member of his fan club anytime soon. That's for sure.
So we learned that Nebula tried to kill him. So at some point, Nebula has turned on him heavily. She failed, which is why she's all strung up. But it also, her recording devices make it so that he's able to download basically her memories, anything she's seen, which is key plot line moving forward.
She knows where the Soul Stone is.
Yep. And so Thanos now is on his way to the Soul Stone. We cut to Rocket and Thor, who we haven't seen since they split up from the bunch of morons. Which that line, that's like one of the funny lines we managed to not discuss. And they're heading to, what's the name of the place?
Nidavellir.
Yeah. Yep.
Nidavellir.
And both Thor and Rocket have some bonding moments where, Rocket's trying to say it's not too bad, right? And then Thor lists off all the people who've died, pretty much everybody. And Rocket's like, okay.
His whole family.
Pretty bad. Yeah, pretty bad.
Yeah.
And what do we discover? So they're going there. The reason they're going there is to create a weapon, a Thanos killing weapon that only Thor can wield.
An axe called Stormbreaker.
Yep.
Yes.
Although I don't think we know that is it called. We don't know it's called that at the point. Yeah.
No, when they go to build it, that's what they call it.
So what do they find?
I said it now because I figure that you're gonna tell me, Shirls, that the Stormbreaker is in the comics.
But it's not Thor's though. I've read in the comics. It's
Right.
someone else's weapon, but it is a comic book reference.
I will say this Nidavellir scene is probably my favorite scene of the whole movie. I love the whole concept of the dead star being used as a forge, and that whole the rings around it. I thought that whole thing was super cool idea, so original and so well done. My favorite scene in the movie is this one here.
Wow. For me,
And
this is kind of dead time for me. I was like,
I
get me
love it.
back to
Agreed.
the fights.
agreed. But going into this scene, because I'm determined to reference every one-liner that made me laugh in the whole movie. But the whole exchange, Thor says, everyone's dead. I got nothing left to lose. It's a great motivator. And Rocket's just kind of mumbling, well, I got stuff to lose. I got stuff to lose. This could suck for me. But then they're determined, and Rocket's like, well, if we're going to beat Thanos, you need two eyes. So he gives him fake eye, or an eye that he took off someone from Contraxia, because you learn in the previous movies he likes to steal body parts, which is kind of dark and funny and awesome. And so Thor pops it in his eye, and then, I can't see anything. It's still dark, and that's when you learn the star is out. But Rocket turns around at him, as he's popping in it, he's like, oh, I would have watched that first. I had to sneak that off Contraxia out and then they cut away from it. So Thor stuck a asshole eyeball into his head.
That eye has seen some shit.
I love that scene because butt jokes are funny, and Rocket stealing body parts is hilarious.
I love it when they make little references to stuff that's happened in past movies, like right there. Like you remember, oh yeah, he stole that eye off that guy. That was awesome.
Right.
And now here it is coming back movies later.
Right. So that's how Thor gets his eye back, because up to this point he's got an eye patch on because his sister stabbed his eye out.
You'll shoot your eye out, kid.
I like his eye patch.
It's just, to me, I agree. And it's great writing. It's like, that's perfect Guardians writing. That the story about the it's just, it felt like a Guardians scene. This is like a Guardians scene that's been meshed in with a
bigger movie,
with an Avengers movie. Anyway, I just love it. So we meet this character named Eitri. So my favorite part of this scene is the fact that they have somebody who is
a little person in real life, and he plays a giant in the movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yes. That's
I
brilliant.
love that too.
Peter Dinklage is a little person, but they make him a giant in this movie, and it is.
And I think giants with disproportionately huge heads are hilarious. Honestly.
I
just
agree
gonna
with
say
you,
it.
Brian, though, that it kind of screeches the action again to a halt. It's a scene. It's a huge scene because it shows you the birthplace of Stormbreaker. But the way the movie's been tracking, I agree that I feel like it slows it down.
It slows it down, but it can't stay at a high point the entire time. So it's almost necessary to. And it is a cool, inventive idea. I totally agree with you on that part, Pat.
Yeah, I just like the uniqueness of that, the mechanics of that place and how it works, and that such a place even exists. I thought that was really super neat.
To me, it was like I was never in doubt that they would succeed, and so they put so many stakes into him, like making it work and like almost dying to get the weapon, and I don't know, like it just felt like there's so many other high stakes in this movie that just felt like to me a little bit of an unnecessary high stakes moment, but nevertheless doesn't affect my enjoyment of this movie at all because it's still fantastic.
Well, this giant apparently was asked by Thanos to make the Infinity Gauntlet, right? And in doing so, Thanos said, I'll spare your people. I'll spare you. You got to make me this. So he makes the Infinity Gauntlet, which you can see the mold of. It's still in this dying old forge. And he winds up turning his hands into giant metal fists and killing everyone but him anyway, in true Thanos style. This
learning about, I get it and why they put it there. But for continuity and like making sure things all line up, if you recall in Ragnarok, you actually see, which probably then a replica, but a gauntlet in Odin's basement or whatever. I'm guessing you, Brian, you know what I'm referencing. So I don't know if they just didn't think through everything, but they already referenced the gauntlet in passing in Odin's basement, but now here's Eitri building it for Thanos in this movie. So I don't know. It's kind of ticky tacky, but
it could be building another one.
Wasn't it called
True.
a fake?
Yeah, it was called a fake.
So the concept had already been there. I mean, the fact that building a glove to wield the stones, that wasn't a new idea apparently, because we've already seen it once.
Yeah,
I thought it was cool to see the mold of it sitting there, though. That was neat.
So then we cut back to Thanos' ship where Nebula is picking herself up. And we see her, we learned that her video disclosed where the Soul Stone was, and she puts a call in to, I believe, Mantis and says, distress signal, meet me on Titan, which is the planet, it's Thanos' home planet. And so she knows that the Soul Stone is kind of a given, and she's anticipating their next step after that to be on Titan. That's a brief scene. It's a brief scene. We cut back to Stark and company, and we get yet another, and they're on Ebony Maw's ship. Ebony Maw's now deceased, and we get another wonderful collision of characters that have never met each other. Quill and crew board the ship thinking they're going to be attacking Thanos, and instead they find Stark, Strange, and Spidey.
That's after they've crashed the donut into Titan, though. They meet on the planet, not on the ship, because Tony and Peter crash land the donut ship.
Oh yeah, there's just a little corner of the donut left by the time it's on the surface.
Not to worry, we are still flying half a ship.
And now they've stepped out of the husk of the ship, and then they're looking around. And then that's when the Guardians are
doing the whole awkward pointing guns at each other, trying to figure out who each other are.
Show up. And this whole section is full of awesome lines and humor and awesomeness. This is one of my favorite whole collections when they meet for the first time and point guns and who the hell are you? Who the hell are you? And Quill's like, I'm gonna French fry this little freak, and it's Peter. And Stark's got a gun the size of a Subaru pointed at Drax's face, and Drax goes, "Do it, I can take it, Peter." Quill, and he's like, "No, you can't. No, you can't."
Drax.
This is there's so many great lines in this. We get right when they're first, Strange recognizes something coming from Quill that sounds like, hey, maybe they're not on Thanos' side. And he says, "Whose master do you serve?" And he
what
says,
am I supposed to say, Jesus?
And then Stark is like, "Oh, you're from Earth? You're from Earth." And Quill references the fact that he's part god and part human.
Quill says, "Are you from Earth?" "No, I'm from Missouri." And Stark goes, "That is Earth, dipshit."
And we have Drax messing with Tony, not listening to him. We get a classic line from Mantis. We get references to Footloose.
Kevin Bacon reference. No,
I think they mentioned the Avengers, right? And don't we?
And that's when they say, "Is Kevin Bacon an Avenger?" No, I don't think so. Or no, I might be talking ahead of myself, but
no, that is definitely
is it? Yeah. And they say, I don't know, maybe I haven't been back in a while.
And then at some point, Mantis sees Strange. He's gone off. He's sick of the banter, and he's doing some tweaking. And we learn, evaluating 14 million different ways that these events could play out. And the most important thing,
using the time stone to go forward in time to see all the possibilities of this conflict that's about to happen. I thought that was neat.
And there's only one in which they prevail. That's the takeaway.
Yeah.
So,
and my takeaway as well, especially after having watched a second time, is that he says there's one in which they prevail, and he never mentions what that situation is. He doesn't elaborate. He just leaves you hanging. There's one. It's like,
he can't say it
because they got to make another movie.
Right.
No, he can't say it. No, that's not it. I'll defend this.
I'm wondering as a first time, like, all right, there's a reason why we're not being told what that one is. And my assumption is because it has to play out exactly the way it plays out. But that's just my thing.
Yeah. I don't want to talk
and he
about
just
it too
does. He
much,
doesn't
but
tell us that that's why it is. We're left to just kind of assume that.
yes, I think that's right. They definitely cannot say why because it's going to be important. But also within
I think Strange knows deep down, and he's not telling anyone. He knows that, well, it all has to go down the way it's going to go down.
Way. Right.
And eventually you'll know why. I'll explain later.
Yeah, that's it. That's it in a nutshell. Yep.
Yeah.
Frustrating as it may be.
Right.
So they also hatch a plan, argue about the plan. That's how Drax is, tuning out Stark completely. So just fantastic scene. It's like getting to see Guardians collide with Spider-Man and Tony Stark, and it's just fantastic. And Doctor Strange.
And Quill asking where is Gamora, and Tony goes, I'll do you one better. Who is Gamora? And then Drax is on the ground and goes, I'll do you one better. Why is Gamora? It's like, yes.
That's right.
So then we cut to Vormir, yet another planet. And we're catching up with Thanos, with Gamora and Toe, speaking of Gamora. And they are often in pursuit of the Soul Stone. And they climb to some mystical mountaintop. And who emerges out of the cavey area? Pat,
Red
you know
Skull.
who emerges here? Yeah.
That's Red Skull. Yeah.
Callback from like movie number 4.
I was going to say, wasn't that the first Captain America? Isn't that where Red Skull's from?
Yeah.
That was the Tesseract movie.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Dang,
And
we're going back here.
We haven't seen him in a long time.
He's the keeper of the Soul Stone, basically.
This
Kind of
is
like
his
the bridge
purgatory.
keeper from Holy Grail. Yeah.
No.
And he explains it all. He says to get the Soul Stone, it extracts a terrible price. The stone demands you lose that which you love, a soul for a soul. And Gamora is just laughing because she's thinking Thanos, he's never loved anything. So how could, he can't get it. And she's thinking she's won. And then this is a powerful scene to me.
Yeah. See, I wondered why she was so confident there. Why she what, you don't think he's going to throw your ass down the well here?
This is where you learn.
And now that you're about to explain it, and it's going to make some sense to me. So I'm going to shut the hell up and let you explain it.
Well, I think I think you're right on it. It's that humanity. She can't process the fact that he actually does love her in his own perverted way. Yeah. But all that love really means for the purposes of the Soul Stone is from the perspective of the person who's loving. And he, in his mind, genuinely loves Gamora. And she and any rational, healthy relationship expert, any child rearing expert, any psychologist on earth would say, no, that's not love. This is psychotic,
Yeah.
But to him, he did love her. And she slowly, the realization, Red Skull knows it from the get-go. He just knows it. And
He's
he
been doing it a
brought his
while.
cover charge with him.
Yeah, he's been doing it a while. He knows how this works.
Yeah.
Yep. And it is a haunting scene to me as she realizes that she is gonna be the sacrifice that's necessary for him to get the fifth stone. So it's a tough scene. He ends up throwing her off the ledge, and
With tears in his eyes. They went out of their way to make it seem like this was so difficult for him.
And then
I
they
thought
show
that was
her
really
at the
well
bottom,
done.
like in a crumpled pile, and that's real
it's gross.
tough. Yeah.
My when I saw this with my daughter Willa, she loves Gamora, and she was not happy with this at all. Very sad moment in the movie theater for her. And and this again, it's they go from having hilarious banter to a very heartfelt, touching scene that's kind of creepy, a creepy, touching scene. And that works to me. I mean, for me, it just works. Then Thanos awakens in the shallow, weird puddle of brackish water, reaches in, and the Soul Stone is there. And
well, I have a question about the Soul Stone. I don't think we ever knew the Soul Stone was a thing until this movie. Am I right about that?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't think
Wong
it's
talks about it at the beginning, but that's the first time.
All
you
the
hear
other
of it.
stones have had their time to be either mentioned and or featured, but I feel like this is the first time we even knew this was a thing, right? Like our first experience with a whole Soul Stone thing. I thought it was cool as hell the way they wrote that and how it's acquired, and I thought that was super well done.
Yeah, I like the scene. It's a momentum killer in ways that Andy and I haven't liked other scenes, but for me, it's not a momentum killer. It's just raising the stakes. And Gamora dies. It's rough.
Right, it's a big one.
In this movie, at this point, we've seen Loki, who's a treasured character, die. We've seen Gamora, maybe not as treasured of a character, but
Big
treasured character die.
Yeah.
Big character. Then we cut from this moving scene to Rogers and Company, Secret Avengers. I'm going to continue to call them. Plus Rhodey, plus Banner, landing in Wakanda, and we get the full Wakanda, frills.
Cool.
It's flying cool. Into the invisible city through the barrier. That whole bit. Yeah, the music.
They're prepping for a fight. We see Shuri. We see Okoye. We see we get all of our favorite characters from Wakanda, and there's a funny scene where they're disembarking their jet, and Rhodey's kind of messing with Banner and gets him to bow, which he doesn't need to do.
We don't do that here.
We don't do that here. And you can see Rhodey just like smirking. I got you, Bruce.
Nice.
And then we establish Shuri as a smarter scientist than Banner. She is saying, well, why don't you just do this? You could have done this. And he was like, well, we didn't think about it,
Yeah, but shade.
Shuri goes to work trying to extract the stone from Vision without killing him. And the rest of them gear up for a fight. And right about that moment, ships enter the atmosphere around Wakanda, and they throw up their dome.
They come down with a mighty thud too, like these big honking,
huge
not very graceful looking things. They just slam into the ground like earthquake machines.
Yeah,
nothing graceful about it.
And it's clear that there's going to be a big fight here. But before we see that fight, we cut back to Thor, where he's finishing up the weapon that we come to know as Stormbreaker. And he
fires the factory up.
Yep. That's when he fires the factory up, and he
suffers
turns
8th degree burns as a result. But it's it's a price he's willing to pay for the potentially the strongest weapon in the universe with a Groot arm axe handle. Are you kidding me? Yes,
that was awesome.
Yes, Groot finally gets up off his ass and contributes.
Yeah, he puts down his
Literally.
video game long enough.
Yeah.
But when the star went out and they had to hold the iris open, and I noted this because, Dinklage's character doesn't say a whole lot. I mean, a little bit, but Thor's like, he says to him, like, you can't hold it open because it'll kill you. And Thor goes, only if I die. And Dinklage goes, that's what killing you means. And it's just, love that too.
Yeah.
Like, what?
So
that's what that means.
we get a couple of back and forths between Wakanda and Thor here. There's like one more cut back and forth before actually Stormbreaker gets finalized. We get a scene where Proxima Midnight and who? Is it Glaive?
No, because he's hiding. Or he's
Proxima arrives for discussions. They meet at the barrier with Steve.
Right, talk terms.
They talk terms. It's not going to work. Nothing's going to work out. And Wakanda, we see the shield being subjected to a pretty withering assault. Then they cut back to we missed the "Get this man a shield" line.
Oh yes, that's a big one.
Which was a big one. Yeah, love that. Something about. Something just that I love about Black Panther interactions with Steve, like
completely different types of shields that we're used to seeing
for each other, like total, like
it's like respect without ass kissing,
Yeah.
Really good for with both of them. So then we go back to Thor and Eitri. Thor succeeds, and Stormbreaker is finalized with part of Groot. Groot's sort of coming out of the teenage years, and Stormbreaker is formed, and it's an axe. And we see hints. I mean, in Thor Ragnarok, Thor was realizing that he has incredible powers without Mjolnir, that his powers don't rely on the hammer. And now he seems to be just supercharged, like there's definite hints of that, that something's coming.
Explain Stormbreaker to me. I know it's a weapon. I know what it is. What is Stormbreaker considered? Like, why are we building Stormbreaker? What's the purpose? Is it because we know this is the only weapon that can kill Thanos? Is there a myth behind the power of a material that's used? Like, what makes Stormbreaker so awesome?
I'll talk a little bit about it in Easter eggs, but in this movie, I think it's just Thor saying Thor went up clearly at the beginning. He went up against Thanos. Thanos didn't even have all the stones at that point, and he wasn't able to defeat him. Or Thanos just got the jump up on him and got him beat down before. Either way, Thor knew that his powers by themselves couldn't take out Thanos. So he's thinking, how can I make myself, superior to him? He knew there's one place where weapons could be forged. And so I think that he just was trying to give himself a boost. Stormbreaker itself from the comics, we'll talk about it a little bit later. It wasn't a Thor weapon. It was basically a peer of Mjolnir. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it in Easter eggs.
Fair enough.
But for the purposes of this story, I think Thor is just looking for something to put him on Thanos's level.
Give me a leg up here.
Right.
He needs a weapon, right?
So there's nothing special about the materials. Like, it's not like a vibranium or it's this certain type of weapon. It's just
the fact
I need
that's
a
where
weapon.
It was built, right?
Okay.
And he knows where to get
Yeah,
those weapons.
It was forged from the innards of a star, I think. Sort of primordial universal goo, I think is the way to look at it. So then we're back to Wakanda, and there's just a crazy battle going on.
The battle for Naboo rages on again.
Before, I don't know, maybe just me, but when they meet at the wall and go back, I'm like, all right, we're gonna have to fight. That gives off total like Braveheart vibes to me. Like total. I mean, it was like Space Braveheart in my mind. Like,
except they didn't flash their butts and their kilts at each other.
There was no butt flashing, but like the total like setup was like this reminded me so much of Braveheart. It would in a cool way. I mean, it was awesome.
The Dora Milaje weren't about to do that, huh?
No.
I totally agree with the Braveheart, and I also agree with the Naboo reference. Both of those are legit. So the this battle is, it's crazy, and it seems at first the shield is holding out, but then they are starting to push through, and they decide they need to open it up a little bit to try to create one choke point.
Yeah, these things are like zombies. Like, they're willing to kill themselves to get through this wall. Like, they have no regard for their own lives. They're just like, it probably killed 100 of them before one of them got through,
Right.
These things are called outriders, and I don't remember if
they're nasty.
Proxima mentions that or not. Speaking of Proxima, just on a side, either of you see the show The Leftovers on HBO?
No.
Oh, okay, never mind. So the woman who plays Proxima is the main character from that show, and it's crazy that she has. It's just such a
right.
that she's got this weird role as this like space monster. So the tide feels like it's starting to swing towards Thanos's crew. Feels like the Wakandan crew is in deep trouble. And then Thor arrives with great fanfare, and it's really the god of thunder and lightning arrives. It's not just the god of thunder.
Badass.
And there's some great almost video game scenes where you see Stormbreaker just like
circling
flying around, zapping everybody.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
When he shows up with Rocket on his shoulder, like holding his gun, and Groot on his side, and that's one of the most badass entrances in any Marvel movie to date, I think.
He was at that moment the most overpowered of all the good guys in the movie at that point. Like, he was glowing. Like, he was just number one. Yeah.
And it's also the second time on opening night for me that audience applause burst out.
Yeah.
When he arrived and started kicking butt, people were clapping in the movie theater. And again, just love the moment.
Just that scene where he just slams it down and you just see hundreds of these creatures just in a circle, just falling. I thought that was super neat.
So, and I think Banner even yells, "You guys are screwed now."
Yeah. Thor's here. You guys are screwed now.
He's in Hulkbuster, and he lifts open the head, and his face laughing, going, "You guys are screwed."
And he continues to try to turn into Hulk.
Yeah,
it's filling the Hulkbuster suit full of farts, I imagine.
Then we cut back to Thanos on Titan. Thanos arrives there. The others, team, I guess we'll call it Team Stark up there. Is now Stark, Strange, Spidey, plus the portion of the Guardians that went off to nowhere. So
Quill, Drax, Mantis.
Yep. And Thanos explains his they ambush him, essentially.
The plan they come up with.
And there's some initial fighting, and Thanos explains his whole plan to Strange. And
Quill flipping off Thanos before back jumping into a portal was probably one of my favorite ones.
Yep, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a great plan. Like I just like how this was executed. It was kind of, if I was to take all of these powers of this group to try to remove a gauntlet from somebody's hand, I think this is kind of the plan that...
It was a solid. I mean, it would have worked.
Mantis was the key.
It would have worked. Yeah.
She dropped down on him out of a portal, and he wasn't ready for that. She puts him to sleep. Capey is of great use during this, by the way. Mm-hmm. But right around this time, Nebula comes crashing in a ship, and most importantly, I think the driver for her arrival is really more about her delivering news of what's happened to Gamora, as opposed to her being able to turn the tide. And very frustrating scene for me and many Marvel fans, the way Quill his choices here. Who knows what somebody's going to do when, when they're just completely in love. It's an unpredictable state of mind. So
one makes irrational decisions, you could say.
Yeah.
Yes.
But as it's happening, even the first time, like each time I've seen it, I get more and more frustrated.
Yeah, it's super
but the
frustrating.
First time, I was like, "Come on, no,
I felt it too. Both times I watched it.
Don't do it, Quill. Come on, no, they've got it. And you see Stark and Spidey almost off, and Mantis is, I can't hold it much longer, and Capey's doing it, Capey things.
Yeah,
and Quill screws it up because he finds out that Gamora has been killed.
Thinking with his heart again.
Yeah.
Yep. And then
super frustrating.
And then Thanos kicks much butt, and he, grievously hurts Stark. There's a great fight, though. What do you guys think about the fight here in general?
Oh, I think it's super well done. I loved all the humor and the very comic booky ways they decide to get the glove off. I mean, it's literally a ploy to just pull a glove off his hand, and I thought that that didn't lack the explosions and all the crazy, giant fight scenes. It was literally all just a tug of war, and it was literally as simple as that. And then once Thanos gets the upper hand, and after that, I thought it was two distinct fight scenes, and I thought it was small scale versus large scale at that point. It was really cool to watch.
Are there any more cutouts from here, or is this,
we're back and forth two more times.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll wait for,
Right after they don't get, one after they fail, Thanos turns the tide. We cut back to Wakanda. Despite Thor showing up, they've now reached Vision. And they're not quite, up in the lab, and they haven't quite finished processing whatever needs to be done, or so we think. There's some interaction on the battlefield, which is fantastic. Groot is on Earth for the first time.
This
top
is
5
scene
scene here.
The another comic relief scene when Steve and Thor see each other. I think this is in this part. And Thor looks at Steve and goes, "Oh, I see you've copied my beard." And Steve goes, "Oh, I see you got a haircut." And then Thor goes, "Hey, have you met my friend Tree?" And points at Groot. And Groot goes, "I am Groot." And Steve goes, "I am Steve Rogers." And it's just friggin' love it. It's just
such a
matter of fact.
It's the one time "I am Groot" literally meant "I am Groot."
Yeah, he was saying that's who I am.
Yeah, that's great.
I am Steve Rogers, because he almost mimics his delivery back. Well, I am Steve Rogers. And I just laughed and laughed and laughed.
In this fight sequence, we get Black Widow and Okoye doing some fighting, teaming up. We have Steve, we have Hulkbuster. We have Hulkbuster killing Cull Obsidian. So Cull Obsidian, Banner ends up being useful despite not being able to turn into Hulk. He kind of decides to do it himself. And a great thing about this movie is in the trailer, they showed Hulk himself. And then it was like a
never shows up, right?
The trailer for this movie, you see Hulk, but then he never shows up. So that's kind of fun. And then we see Corvus Glaive getting Steve down in a wooded area. A group gets sent off into some woods.
Yeah, off to the side, yeah.
And then Vision has since been released when they reached him in the lab, and he stabs through Corvus Glaive. So Cull Obsidian and Corvus Glaive are off the battlefield. I think Proxima Midnight was killed once Wanda joined the battlefield, right?
Yep. And Wanda comes down and clears the area with her powers and just shreds them. And Okoye is like, "Why has she been up there the whole time? Where the hell has she been?"
Yep.
Is Wanda joining the fight? What causes, is that the guard that got let down for them to get in to try to get at Vision? They wanted to pull, is it because Wanda left to join the battle?
They wanted to pull Wanda out from there to leave Vision unguarded, I think.
I see.
Then we cut back to Titan, and Thanos is kicking Strange's and Tony's ass. And Strange does some, he does a move straight out of the comics where he like has a bunch of Stranges and they've all got like laser whips.
Oh yeah.
Which is one of his classic moves, and it's the first time we've seen him employ it, so that was fun. But still, Thanos, once they didn't get that glove off, they were in trouble. And in this scene, Tony has been stabbed badly by Thanos, and Strange negotiates the stone for Tony's life, and because he had it hidden, basically among the stars. Kind of a cool visual effect, the way he pulls it out of the sky. But Strange ends up swapping the time stone in exchange for Tony being able to survive. And Tony's like, what the hell? Why are we doing this? And
why did you do that?
Why'd you just do that? Yeah. And so then Thanos has number 5, and as soon as he gets 5, he's basically out of there. He disappears into one of his clouds of smoke. Then we cut back to Wakanda.
Because he knows where number 6 is at this point.
Yep,
yeah,
he does.
Yeah, he has got a. And that when they stabbed Tony, that was another moment where I thought I thought he was dead. Like,
yeah, me too.
I wasn't sure if another main character was going to get killed off.
Yeah, I felt the same. I was like, damn, this is how he goes,
Iron Man. Right. I thought for sure he was dead. I mean, that was a gut punch.
Yeah, because like leading into this movie, you knew they were reaching culminations of big things.
Well,
and they had all these characters, and you knew that there were going to be consequences, And so I was on high alert for who was going to die.
Right.
And once Loki died right away, I was like, okay, I'm really on high alert for who's going to die.
Right.
So that's how I was thinking about it at the time. So we get back to Wakanda. Wanda finds Vision in the woods. They start to find, the atmosphere changes. Everybody's looking up. What's going on? Steve says something like, eyes up, keep sharp, as if anybody wouldn't be doing that at this point.
That's what Steve says, though. I mean, it wouldn't be Marvel without Steve.
What would Steve say in this situation? Exactly that.
Yeah, that's true. And then we have a moment between Vision and Wanda where kind of similar to Gamora and Quill earlier, where, to me, it's a powerful emotional line where he says, at this point, they know she's got to remove it and he's going to die, and she's got to destroy the stone, and she's the only one that can of the, based on the current situation
to do it.
Right.
Yep. And he says, it's all right. You can never hurt me. And Thanos arrives. Thanos is on the scene. We see Steve briefly hold off Thanos, which I loved. I love, like he's at this point, 5 Infinity Stones. There's no plausible reason why Steve is strong enough to hold him off except for sure willpower.
Right.
Yeah. His strength score doesn't explain it.
I loved, just by the way, I just want to tell you, I loved how he threw Banner Hulkbuster aside and he sort of melded into the rock on the side. I thought that was cool visual effect.
He did
that to somebody else.
That was some Reality Stone shit right there.
All of them, different ways to do it, but he just sloughed them all aside like they were flies. Just swatted them away.
The Hulkbuster part was my favorite one, though. He just all of a sudden he just embedded in rock. I was like, oh, cool.
Kind of Star Warsy, Han Solo.
Yeah.
Just
deliver him to Jabba.
Yeah.
She gets the stone out of his head. We get another lifeless body, which has impact on me. So we're counting Vision to the list of the deceased. 4 comes in at that point, or does he rewind before?
Well, he rewinds first. He turns back time with the stone.
Because Wanda does in fact destroy the stone.
To bring Vision back to life. Then he takes the stone, then kills Vision again, and now he's got the stone. So yeah, it's after that Thor re-arrives.
Yeah, Thanos has some great line where he says like, I don't know, like in association with him deciding to rewind time, it was like there is no time, something like that.
Yeah.
Solid line.
Yeah, there's no
And
time left or something like that.
And he's like, yeah, basically on the contrary, I've got all the time I need or something. And he hits the rewind button.
Yep. And so Thanos succeeds. It's looking grim. Thor hasn't been in the woods yet. He shows up, and Stormbreaker, I think he throws it, right?
He comes out of the sky
he's
and
flying
he
in
just
out of the
chucks
sky,
the axe
yeah.
at him.
Yep.
And it's just end over end.
Barrels into his chest.
Yeah, smokes him right in the chest. And then he shows up and just shoves it down deeper into his chest.
Yep. And he basically is saying, I told you I'd get you, you know, like I got you. And Thanos then snaps, says you should have gone for the head.
And then snaps. Yeah.
And then disappears in one of his Thanos clouds. Then what's happening? Pat, you take it from here, because I'm curious what your thoughts are at this point in this movie.
Well, yeah. See, this is the stuff that unfortunately I kind of knew was going to happen, only because the manner in which what's about to unfold happens was so heavily memed in other forums on the internet. The whole disintegrating and flying away. It was other things were memeing that. So it was hard not to know what that meant or what that was going to, was going to happen. So I already had known going in that half the Avengers were just going to disappear. I just didn't know who. But I knew that that's exactly what was about to happen. So I was kind of prepared for that. Unfortunately, that didn't give me any sort of shock value, because the manner in which the deaths happened was so heavily memed, it was inescapable to stay so spoiler free from that. But I will say, because it does switch back and forth, all the Wakanda, I think people start disappearing first. Is that kind of where it starts? I think Black Panther and Bucky.
Okoye sees Black Panther disappear.
Yeah, half the battlefield starts
what's
dropping.
Going on?
Yeah.
This is Panther says to Okoye, "This is no place to die."
Yeah. And immediately it happens. Yeah.
Oof.
So Bucky, Black Panther, Groot, that was hard to watch. Wanda, I actually like was happy for Wanda. I think she would have probably preferred to be one of the ones that went in the situation she was in. Falcon disappears.
Yeah.
And then we go back to Titan, and we get Mantis disappears, Drax, Quill, who's very much unhappy with his predicament, Doctor Strange, and before Doctor Strange goes, he tells Tony, literally says the words, "There was no other way." And I think he's alluding to the 1 in 14 million thing, like it had to happen this way, or there was no other way. So that's how I interpreted that. Like he's going away, but he's like, "It's cool, man. I did this for a reason." It's like that's kind of the thing I got from Doctor Strange. And then of course they hit us right in the boo-boo. They slow, drawn out Peter Parker disappearing, and that one was a little knife twisty the way they did it, and it was very well done. Yeah,
he's actually like begging to not die.
He's whimpering, like, "No, please, and
I don't want to go. I don't want to go."
That was probably the most emotional of all the disappearing characters. Was that one, watching him die in Tony's arms, is just like,
it was brutal. So Stark's there by himself. Like everyone but him. I know it's a flip of the coin, but everyone else lost the toss but Tony Stark on that side of it.
And Nebula.
Yeah. And that's the most memed part of all of it, was Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good. That was so memed.
Yeah. So it wasn't a matter that it happened. Like, I knew something was going to happen. I was spoiler free on who it happened to. So that part got me. I was like, damn.
I read somewhere too that I want to say that a bit of that dialogue was ad-libbed, like to make it that like emotional. I think what's his face who plays Spider-Man? I'm blanking me right now, but I think that was a little bit of ad-lib dialogue. And that's partially why it was just so much of a gut punch.
Yeah. It was brilliant. It was really well done.
Good scene. Yeah. And Stark is just like stuck in space.
Yeah.
You know, he's like
utterly speechless, just his head in his hands. And you never see Stark like that, just completely and
pretty
utterly
wounded.
defeated.
Yeah,
he's
definitely
been
hurt.
wounded, but we know he like used some of his Stark tech to like seal the wound at least, but he's not in a good space. And then it just ends.
He's next to some crazy blue chick.
The credits roll, and an Avengers movie ends with everybody except pretty much the original Avengers, right?
We do get to see a pretty satisfied Thanos right at the end. As the sun sets on his land, he had made some sort of allusion to, when this is all done, I'm gonna
go rest,
watch the sunset and blah blah blah. And so it shows that exact scene, and that he has a very satisfied smirk on his face at the end, and then it cuts to the credits, and I was like, "Ooh, you bastard!"
You're right, Brian. For probably purposeful reasons. It's just the way it worked out, but it's pretty much the original Avengers that survive, along with a few, peripheral characters. But you'll notice it's all the Avengers from the first movie live.
Of the people in this movie, Stark is alive, Steve's alive, Nat is alive, Banner's alive, Thor's alive.
Yep.
There you go.
And then Rhodey lives.
Yeah, that's true. And we don't know anything about.
Yeah, we got Rocket too, so that's nice.
We don't know about Hawkeye because he's not in.
He's
the
off
movie.
Screen, or Ant-Man or any of those.
So
you don't know.
Wow, Rocket's the only Guardian that made it, huh? Wow.
Yep.
So that's
Nebula, I suppose, but she hasn't. She's not
technically
a Guardian, but
they didn't let her in the club quite yet.
Right.
Damn.
So then we go. There's one post-credit scene. Pat, you want to take this?
Yeah. So we are in a moving vehicle with Agent Maria Hill and Nick Fury, and it seems to be right of the moment of Thanos' snap in terms of the timeline when this happens. And he's making references to not having any word from Stark, because Stark has left the planet. So no one's heard from him. And right when they're talking about that there was bogeys in Wakanda or something along those lines. So they knew something was going down. They were clearly aware. And right at that point, there's a big car accident and mayhem ensues. People who are driving cars, flying planes, and other machinery are disappearing. They're part of the 50% of Thanos' snap, and mayhem is ensuing. And unfortunately, we see he calls for a call control code red, I think is what Nick Fury says. And before that even happens, Agent Maria Hill is among those who disappear. And not long after, Nick Fury, just as he's about to call for help, and I love what they did here. He's about to say his trademark mother, and right when that happens, he disappears too. So that was just trademark gold. Samuel L. Jackson awesomeness right there. And then the little beeper thing that he was holding at the time falls to the ground, and we get a close-up of it. And we see that whatever message he was looking to get out, maybe this was him calling control or whatever, but he manages to get the message sent. And we see a little sort of a star-shaped compass-type symbol as a reply, I'm going to assume, on the ground. And we're led to believe that this is a symbol for Captain Marvel. At least that's what you all told me when we watched it at the viewing party. I would not have known what that was otherwise. And so you guys were like, oh, it's Captain Marvel. It's like, okay. So that is the post-credit scene. I thought it was super neat that they got Nick Fury, because I've always loved Nick Fury, and that they worked it in with the moment of Thanos' snap to give it that timeline feel, that they're right there too.
And he got to say mother effer in a Disney movie.
Yes.
You got to say half of it.
In my brain, I heard the whole thing. The whole thing.
All right, well, that's a wrap on the play-by-play. Let's get to our structured stuff here. Let's start off with the music of this movie, more of the review phase. The music, the score is by Alan Silvestri, who's done several movies. He's done the Avengers movies up to this point. Also did Captain America: The First Avenger. So he's done the score for quite a bit. There's also some intentional use of other MCU movie properties, as Andy pointed out. The Wakanda theme pops up. And in terms of pop culture music, the only thing that stands out is Rubber Band Man.
Yeah. You can't have Guardians and not have some sort of Guardians style, bit of music to it. Oh, I thought the music was amazing. The whole plot line and the storyline was so convoluted and complicated, and there were so many moving parts. And I've said it multiple times in these podcasts that when the soundtrack is more noticeable in certain moments and it's more in the background to let the action play out, I think that's a soundtrack that's really well done, is the one you don't notice as much, or you notice only at certain times when you're made to pay attention to it. I think that's when it's really well done and well used, and they absolutely nailed it in this one.
Andy,
Agreed.
What do you think?
Agreed. Yeah, thinking back, it's not full of a bunch of, recognizable music like some Marvel movies are. Yeah, with Rubber Band Man being the only, music I recall. But yeah, their usage of the themes and like the Avengers theme when that comes on the first time is just like, wow. Like it all worked really well. But there's not a lot of music, if that makes sense. The Rubber Band Man is the only one that I recall. But their use of the music and themes was all perfect in my mind.
I love the music in this. Basically I'll just save time and echo everything you guys just said. Fantastic music. Let's talk about characters. I'm going to start a little different this time because, and this isn't me who came up with this, but I agree with it. A lot of people, a lot of reviewers, critics, people who've looked back on these movies in retrospectives believe that this movie is Thanos' movie, that Thanos is the main character. And so let's start with Thanos. And I actually agree with that. I think if you had to pick a main character in this movie, it would be Thanos. So let's talk about Thanos. Villains first. Thanos is a main, what'd you think? The first time we get to see Josh Brolin in action.
Yeah, Josh Brolin. Oh, well, we've been teased for so long about Thanos. We got brief glimpses of him in stuff from other previous movies. So to have, full on Thanos in this movie was a real treat. Yeah, I thought that was, easily, I think, the best villain to this point. A villain that actually was semi-relatable at times, completely just and utterly ruthless at other times. And the effects and the acting and the voice work was just out of this world good, I thought. And the whole concept of the path to collecting all these stones was just perfect for this character. I have no idea what the Thanos origin in the comic book was, but he's been my favorite villain by far, and I think it's probably because we've gotten teasers of this villain along the way
for a long time.
Yeah.
They referenced him a long time ago, and the evolution of him before actually showing up on the screen. And if you look back, like even what he looks like changed, because when they first put him into these, like he doesn't even look. He
didn't have that gold helmet or anything like that.
Right, if you go back and look at the first glimpses of him to what he is actually in this movie, there's significant style differences to what he actually ended up being in this movie.
He's a very simple style in this movie, not big weapons, not big gaudy outfits or capes or anything like that. It's just a big muscular dude.
He is a badass, though.
I think it's great. Yeah, I think it's they somehow take this weird, sinister plan and give it plausible, I don't know what you call it, but plausible rationale, I guess. It's kind of what, Pat, you were getting at when you were saying he's slightly sympathetic. I think it's a great villain. There's no comic relief from him, except unless it's bouncing off of him when you're talking about his scrotum on his chin and that kind of stuff. But
or when he uses the reality stone, that's his humor.
Yeah, that's
he's
true.
not a funny fellow by any stretch.
But that he wouldn't be. Anybody that's got this mission, not a funny person.
No.
So I think Thanos I would grade out very highly as a villain, and I think it pays off that it's a culmination, like you said, of somebody that's been referenced forever. What are we thinking about his crew, his four children of Thanos, so to speak?
They're not as, they ended up not being as tough as maybe they seemed kind of disposable. They lasted a while, most of them, but like Ma, for being as strong as he was, that was kind of an unceremonious way to go.
Blew his ass out of the airlock, baby.
And just froze him in space. So I don't know.
He was my favorite of them, was Ebony Maw.
Yeah.
Squidward.
Yeah, he kind of got, the grand scheme of things, he was out pretty quick compared to the others.
I liked Proxima. Proxima Midnight was my favorite. I liked her design, and Maw was cool too. I like them. I think they were good, just kind of perfect level of henchmen. All right, let's talk about the core Avengers, the original. Let's start that way. Because it's a Russo brothers movie, let's start with Steve. What do you guys think?
Bearded Captain America.
Yeah.
Badass.
Yeah. He was great. I like the design they had for him. The beard was a great look, absolutely great look. Maybe it was because it was such a huge cast for a movie, but I felt like we got a little underutilized Steve Rogers. I feel like we could have gotten more of him. We could have gotten more of him, but we didn't. But he didn't do anything that he wouldn't typically do. It wasn't. It wasn't his movie. Let's just say it wasn't his movie. I know whose movie it was, and I'm going to tell you when we get to him. But it wasn't Steve Rogers' movie.
No.
Yeah. He didn't have a ton of screen time, but he was used to great effect. That's how I would frame it. What about Tony?
He's my favorite Avenger. He's Tony's Tony, and the evolution of him from Iron Man 1 through now, and we'll see it again next, but the evolution of where he started to where he's at now is fantastic and well written. And to think that Playboy in Iron Man 1 is now, got the weight of the actual universe on his shoulders by the end of this movie it's very well done. It just shows the growth in him.
Yeah, and I love that they went out of their way very early in this movie to establish that I'm going to marry Pepper Potts. We're going to have a baby. I don't want you to do this Avenger thing. Wait, come back. That was all established right out of the gate. So we're already feeling like Tony's sacrificing probably more than he's ever had to sacrifice to do what he's doing for this movie. So immediately the writing for him is friggin' awesome. And it has more gravity because of that. They've included that. So having his head in his hands at the very end, I'm immediately brought back to that opening scene with Pepper Potts, and I think that's what he's thinking about.
Right. Well, yeah, and he had just lost. He'll never see Pepper again. He's thinking. He watched Peter disappear in his arms.
Yeah.
And he's like, "We're dead. We're done. We lost."
I think a lot of growth for Tony in this movie, no doubt, but he's in a precarious spot.
Marooned.
Marooned for sure. It's just fantastic. No complaints. His character's played perfectly by Downey. The writing, the way they move the character, everything's perfect. Just A+ with Stark, in my opinion. All right, Thor.
This is Thor's movie. right from the jump, this was Thor's movie, and the way they built his character up, all the trials and tribulations that he went through to get Stormbreaker, and to be the most ass-kickingest fighter on the battlefield right up until the final moment when he should have gone for the head. This was Thor's movie, and he friggin' nailed it.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, that should have gone for the headline and moment is pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And that's all I'll say for now. But yeah, it was good. Thor's a badass.
They definitely elevated Thor. You know, his trajectory has been fantastic. And he doesn't disappoint in this. I agree. I still would stand by it being Thanos' movie, but as far as the Avengers go, I might say it's Tony's movie, but it's a real close call for me in that regard.
Well,
I'm a Tony Stark Bobo when I'm saying this is Thor.
I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
know,
kind
that's
of-
true.
Yeah.
It's kind of both their movies because they never crossed paths. There's several Avengers that never crossed paths even once. That's how big and sprawling this movie is. There's many interactions you never see because they never actually see each other through the entire movie.
Yeah, Tony and Steve were kept away from each other this whole time.
They haven't seen each other, and
there's no healing there.
Yeah, nope.
Yeah, and now they're both, you know, everybody just got dusted. So Banner. What about Banner?
Really well done. Personally, it sucked and it saddened me to not see Hulk. Like, I really wanted to see Hulk kick ass on this stage, but in the grand scheme of things, I think it happened that way for a reason, and it was good for the story.
Yes.
It sucked personally. Like, God, I wish I could see Hulk just kick ass on the battlefield, but it had to be the way it was, and that inner conflict between Bruce and Hulk was done really well. So I thought that was great, even though personally I was super bummed that we just got to see a lot of Bruce and not a lot of Hulk.
Saw Hulk in the first 5 minutes, and that's it.
And that was it.
We did, yeah, it's kind of backwards. You'd think you'd see Hulk at the end, but we got Hulk at the beginning and then he got clipped.
Right.
But I like the Ruffalo, I like the Banner more and more. You know, I loved the Banner in Ragnarok.
His character is very much a comic relief character in a lot of ways. He's very, very funny. In a dry way, of course, but and also in a clueless, I'm just following along here as a tag along, sort of just, I don't know what's happening kind of humor. That's kind of where he comes in.
Because he's human. He's not Hulk. So you're just I'm smart and I can, science stuff, but I can't do a lot right now when we're being attacked.
Yeah. That's what I like about his character, and I thought they did really well. And I agree with you, Andy, 100% that there has to be a reason he couldn't bring Hulk out. So there's a reason for it. Yeah, that's the only reason you wouldn't bring him out in a big fight like that. There's got to be a reason.
Interesting. I think it's that. They used Hulk right away to just establish how strong Thanos was. You know, like we said at the beginning.
Oh yeah,
he fought a one-stone Thanos.
Got his ass handed to him.
And got his ass handed to him. Yeah, and so it's not clear that he would have made a huge difference. He would have made a huge difference against those Outriders.
Yeah, that's what I meant by on the battlefield. He would have cleaned up on that scene.
Yes, and plus, yeah. Anyway, and he was just such the permanent Hulk version from Ragnarok was fantastic. So I just kind of wanted more of that,
Right.
But nonetheless, I think they did a good job with Hulk. The last of the original Avengers that were in this movie, Nat, she didn't get much screen time. Did we like her?
I would have liked more of her. I agree with you there. She was severely underutilized in this movie. They didn't really move much of the Banner Nat plot line forward either. I felt like they didn't really go there aside from the awkward, "Hey, how you doing?"
Not at all. I have thoughts on that, and I always they've never really fully committed to that. I think, I don't know, the they kind of half-assed the love interest between those two characters, and they never. I don't know. They could have done more, or just didn't do it at all. But they just kind of
wasn't really addressed in this one.
half-baked it. Yeah, and it didn't go anywhere. And other than that weird hey Tone or hey Bruce, hey Nat, and that was it. It was weird to me. I don't know.
She had some great fight moves like she always does, but she, as a character, I felt like she was severely underutilized.
Right.
Yep. I mean, it's impossible. They can't.
There's not enough screen time and run time unless you wanted to make a 10-hour movie.
Yeah, it was a conscious move to have her not be the key. But the sun shines on every dog's ass at some point, so maybe she'll get better screen time later. You never know. Let's talk about, I think, the biggest non-original Avengers in this movie. Strange has a huge role. What do you guys think there?
Oh, he was phenomenal. His interactions with Stark were throughout the whole movie were great. Doctor Strange is actually becoming one of my favorite Marvel characters every time I see him. I enjoy him more and more. He's rising up the charts for me, and I thought the whole movie Doctor Strange was phenomenal.
Agreed. They did a great job. The power struggle of two very strong individuals with Tony and Doctor Strange was done beautifully. Like two very, very top dog characters.
Yeah,
like
and I love that they were together the whole movie. I don't think there was much where they were ever not by each other's side. Pretty much the whole movie. So
agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
An interesting pairing. Yeah, interesting choice. For me, in the comics, Doctor Strange was one of my absolute favorites, and Captain America is one of my least favorites in the comic books. And in the MCU, Strange hasn't been one of my favorites, and Captain America is my favorite. So it's strange flip for me, but I think he was great, just utilized perfectly in this movie.
Yeah. Hat tip to Capey as well.
Yeah. I love Capey. I'm a big fan of Capey.
Loyal piece of underwear. Loyal piece of underwear.
Absolutely.
I have that underwear that clung to me less than Capey.
It's not really supposed to cling to you though, and underwear. You're doing it wrong if your underwear is clinging to you.
That's kind of the joke, man.
So Wanda and Vision. I'm going to pair them together. What do you guys think?
I don't recall, but was their interest in each other as strong as it was exiting the other movies as it was entering this movie, or is that more of a off-camera relationship build? I don't remember him being like,
there's the scene in Civil War. There's the scene in Civil War where
vacation.
She's on house arrest essentially, and
Vision
is
he's kind of guarding her
together. Right? Yeah,
he's kind of guarding her, and then they have the cooking scene where she makes paprikash, the Hungarian dish for. So I think it was built.
The seed was planted.
Seed was planted. It wasn't, and those in the comic book knowledge, they're married in comics, and so it was kind of, I expected that to be blossoming. But yeah, it was kind of like the Nat and Banner. They didn't really dive off into relationship stuff ever, but that's probably just as well.
I will say one of the few things that kind of irritates me is at the end when Vision's like, you've got to do this, and she's super upset about it. Her lip quiver is so over the top that for some reason that really bothers me. You can see it if you rewatch it. It's just like cartoonish how much that lip quiver is. Like, no, I don't want to do it. And it's like, dial it back. You're overacting. That was my only.
I'm gonna think of you every time I see that scene moving forward. This is the one that pissed Andy off.
Come on, I get that you're upset, but this is just comical.
Well, I'm gonna think of you every time I make somebody quiver their lip from my emotional speaking. And then because I do that all. I've been known to quiver lip people quite often.
Well, yeah, it helps to get what you need when you. Yeah.
No, I cause a quiver lip to be given to me in response to my words. I
gotcha, 'cause you're such a powerful orator. Yes.
Yes, right, exactly. That's why people just are moved to quiver lipping around me at all times. So, in the interest of time, we're gonna not structure any other characters, but I'm gonna throw it to you guys. Any other characters in this that you feel need some shout out? We're talking Guardians. We're talking Peter, Parker. Anything else that stands out as big characters here?
I want to thank Drax for once again being hilarious. I want to thank Groot for being awesome. And I'd also like to thank Peter Quill for making me laugh constantly throughout this movie in several different ways. Yeah, mostly the Guardians. I thought the Guardians were freaking awesome.
Guardians were awesome. Rocket. Shout out to Rocket too. Like the eyeball thing, and we didn't mention earlier, but on the battlefield, this awesome scene when Bucky's holding Rocket and shooting his own gun and spinning in a circle, and Rocket and him, it's like basically, a circle of gunfire. And then Rocket looks at Bucky and goes, "How much for the gun?" And he goes, "Not for sale." And then he goes, "How much for the arm?" And he looks at him like, "What?" And he goes, "Oh, I'll get that arm.
I'll get that arm."
So
he will too. I believe.
Him,
I honestly believe he will.
Scavenging body parts is referenced again, and I love that. Rocket's great. He's been every movie he's been in has just been fantastic, and I still can't believe that's Bradley Cooper. I can't see it. Even I wish there was outtakes where I could watch him voicing Rocket.
There are. That video's out there. Yeah.
Where you can see him. I haven't seen them yet.
It's great. It's just YouTube. It's on YouTube.
Seeing I can't see Bradley Cooper when I hear Rocket speak or see Rocket speak. And I've always thought that was awesome that's who that is.
He makes funny facial expressions when he does.
Maybe he'll be the next Mark Hamill of voice acting.
I think he's too big of an actual actor. Like he's making movies with Gaga, dude.
True.
That's a good point.
Gaga, who ate some meals in Loring Park recently, apparently.
Pronounced Gaga. And I did hear that as well.
All right, we're gonna move on from Gaga or whatever the hell it is you're saying. Let's move on. Our next segment, transitioning. Our next segment is Easter eggs. And Andy, you were mentioning one earlier. Why don't you take it?
This Easter egg, this Russo brothers Easter egg, and I had read this, online at some point, and I have no lie, probably seen this movie 30 times, and for the first 28 of them, I never caught this reference. I never noticed it because it's super brief. But when they're on nowhere and Peter's poorly trying to wrangle the troops to sneak up on Thanos, they tiptoe by the collector's got all his different, things in his collection. And one of the boxes, and it's so brief, but it's David Cross as Blue Man, which is an Arrested Development reference. And it's in there. I've went back and slow-moed it, and it's so awesome. And I never, ever noticed it until like 2 weeks ago I played it and found it. It's such a deep cut.
It got by me, that's for sure.
Up until this point, the Russo brothers had put actors from Arrested, or not from Arrested Development, from Community. Into everything. I don't know if there was one in this. I don't think so.
I don't think so. No.
Yeah. So, but I love that. It's just, I didn't notice that until many times seeing it. Like that one slipped past me. Plus, Arrested Development wasn't on my radar. I just watched that show probably a year and a half ago for the first time, and so it wasn't on my radar when this movie came out. But I think it's a fantastic Easter egg. Another Easter egg here is. We talked about this a little bit. Stormbreaker in the comics, Stormbreaker, and Andy, you mentioned this, isn't Thor's. In the comics, other characters get elevated to Thor status, and one of them is Beta Ray Bill, who's a giant, not a giant, but a horse-headed character who is himself an Easter egg in Thor Ragnarok. There's an image of Beta Ray Bill in the city monument of the Grand Master's city.
Like you see
like the Champions Tower or whatever it is.
Yeah, the Champions Tower has Beta Ray Bill's face, and he's not Asgardian, but at some point Odin deems him worthy, and he briefly carries Mjolnir, but then they decide they need two different Thor-leveled people, so Stormbreaker is created for Beta Ray Bill to wield. And Beta Ray Bill is kind of a pretty fun character. I've collected some of those comics, and it's he's not a perfect character at all. He's kind of a rough life kind of thing. And so it's fun that they changed that all up. They gave Stormbreaker to Thor. And it was kind of surprising because they teased Beta Ray Bill in Thor Ragnarok. So you'd think that Beta Ray Bill would show up at some point in the future with Stormbreaker, but no, Stormbreaker is now Thor's weapon. Another small Easter egg is the ribbons we talked about earlier, when Thanos used the Reality Stone to turn Mantis and Drax into ribbons and something else. In the comics, Thanos does that to Nebula. He turns her into the ribbons. And so that was kind of a fun Easter egg to the comics. Another is when Tony and Pepper are talking about kids, they mention naming it potential kids, Morgan. And in the comics, Morgan Stark is related to Tony. It's an uncle, I believe. No, cousin. It's a cousin who's kind of a bad guy and also a tech, not quite as much of a tech genius, but has a rival tech company. So it's interesting that they, threw that name out. That one could be just coincidence, like the writers might, but I doubt anything like that is a coincidence.
No, that would have been intentional. Well, they reference in the movie, they say Morgan is Pepper's eccentric uncle or something. So it is a relation in the movie context too. Yep.
And finally, the initial SOS in that opening scene where you hear the voice doing an SOS for the Asgardian ship. The voice doing that is Kenneth Branagh, who's an actor, famous actor, but he also directed the first Thor movie. And
really?
The Russos just were like, hey, you want to have something in here? And so he's the voice of that SOS distress signal in the very beginning, which is pretty fun.
I have a personal Easter egg I'd like to add. All right,
please do.
So here, and I know this is cool because she's told me it's more than cool. But you all know my friend Nissa. She's from Mass. She just moved here to Minnesota this past December. She plays for the wiffle ball team Bears. My wiffle teammate. She voted in as a fun star. Her middle name is Thanosi, after Thanos.
No way.
She is a huge comic book nerd. Actually owned a comic book shop in Massachusetts when we lived there.
Really?
Called Knight's Quest. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Huge comic book nerd. Yeah.
Have I met her?
Middle name is Thanosi. Yep. Yeah, if you haven't been to a Bears game this year, then you probably haven't met her. She's the one who made our big scoreboard that we have at games and stuff.
Which is an awesome scoreboard.
Yeah, It's a pretty neat deal.
I have not met her. That's awesome, though. I can't wait to meet her.
Yeah. Was friends with her since grew up in the same neighborhood. She founded the original HRL league with me and my brother and all that shit. We go way back. Is she
single?
Yes.
She's single. Interesting.
Very
interesting.
She's very single.
Yeah, does she like the Oakland A's?
No, she likes the Red Sox.
Okay.
We split an MLB TV package.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to takeaways. This is the part where we talk about thematic elements that you think you're supposed to take away. Some of these are really served up for us heavy here. I mean, an obvious takeaway is half the world is gone.
Gone. Yeah.
So there's big takeaways, but first, do you guys have any you want to say before I go?
The big sliver in my mind that I'm left with from this movie is there's something going on here that Doctor Strange isn't telling us, damn it. And I want to know what it is. That's my big takeaway from this movie. Also, Tony Stark desperately rethinking his life. I feel like that's about to come into play soon here too. Yeah. But the big thing for me is Doctor Strange's whole approach here is the big one for me.
This is the first Marvel movie where the end is just so bleak. Like every movie usually, sure, they all build on each other, some of them, but this is the first one where they are just totally and utterly defeated and they just got beat badly. And like, where do you go from there? Or how do they come back from this? And personally, leaving the theater, like, one, that was like such a crushing, like, they just got demolished. But then on a personal level, knowing I had to wait an entire year to find out what happens next, that sucked. Like, I remember leaving the theater like, okay, I have 374 more days until I get to find out what happens.
Was it known at that point that Avengers Endgame was coming?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I knew there was movies in between that were addressing different characters, but I was pretty darn sure that they weren't happening, in between those two events. So knowing I had to wait over a calendar year to get resolution sucked.
Yep.
Because that was a really crappy, kind of like, I'll give you, throw up a Star Wars softball for you at the end of Empire. Like, yeah. That's about as downer of a way you can end as possible. And that's how this was for me. Like, there's nothing good that just came out of this. They got beat.
A+ Star Wars analogy.
How about you, Bryan? Thoughts?
I let me know if you can still hear me because I had my AirPods just died. Yeah. The big takeaways, one I talked a little bit about was the juxtaposition of we don't trade lives when he was telling Vision, we don't need to sacrifice you, to Thanos's overarching mission. That's a big thematic takeaway, in my opinion. The concept of trading lives and every life matters. I think what you said, Pat, about Tony's story arc is going from the narcissistic, self-absorbed guy to somebody willing to go out in space to meet the challenge head on and sacrifice himself if need be. And that's I think a big takeaway thematically from this movie. I think the bond of the Guardians is a big takeaway. They become more of we see them become more tight-knit throughout this. There's development there. And I think a big takeaway is that the original Avengers survived. That's I think it's hard to not notice that leaving this movie. And I think a big takeaway is this is the first movie, and this is kind of what you're saying, Andy. There are consequences. It hasn't really felt like tons of consequences in the Marvel Cinematic Universe up till this point, but we just had Loki, Vision, Gamora wiped off the map, and then a bunch, then half of everybody else.
Right.
And so it was a dark way to leave. That's what I think. Pat, let's hear your predictions. Andy and I are going to sit back and how do you think things are going to play out? Knowing that the next movie is Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Yeah. Then
after that, you have Captain Marvel. And then after that, you have another Avengers movie called Endgame.
My mind's on Endgame, man. I know there's two more movies. I don't know where they rest on the timeline. If half of the world of Ant-Man and Wasp has disappeared, or if half the world of Captain Marvel's definitely disappeared. So what I'm hoping we got is basically going to be a continuation, like from that cutscene at the end with Nick Fury, I'm hoping what we see in Captain Marvel is going to be her getting that message from Nick Fury, and now the story continues. Now we're just seeing it from Captain Marvel's point of view. That's what I'm looking for if we're getting a continuation from the last one. Yeah, that's I guess that's my prediction, is that we're going to pick up right where we left off from this cutscene, except from Captain Marvel's end.
So Endgame, it was known at this point that the movie was coming out, and it was called Endgame, correct? Or no, the title hadn't been released yet.
Yeah, it was. They changed it though. It was initially called. Well, these were initially going to come out as one big movie, and
That's
then
right.
and then they switched them into two. But I think the title was announced. Yeah.
Because you'll notice at the end of Infinity War, Doctor Strange looks at Tony and he's like, "Why did you do that? Why did you?" And he looked at him and said, "We're in the end game now."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, that's clear that that's what the next movie is going to be called. Because there was a brief moment I don't think we knew yet, but I'm like, it seems kind of telegraphed there. It's got to be called Endgame.
I couldn't hear anything Pat was saying during the prediction. So if you posed any questions to me, like my audio pooped out and all I heard was you saying Captain Marvel at the end. So if there's anything you were asking me, I did not hear it.
Nope. I spoke my piece.
All right. Well, you'll have to tell me later what he said. Well, I'll just listen to it. It'll be a surprise.
There you go.
So let's go around and rate this movie. I'm going to start this time. We'll finish with Andy, our special guest. Just A+. It's not my favorite MCU movie, but it's top 3 for sure. Top 3 or 4. A+. I think it's amazing that they incorporated this many characters, this many high profile actors, this many storylines, and created a cliffhanger. Everything about it is just cinematic royalty. So it's just a fantastic movie. Pat, what do you think?
Oh, A+ movie. This is the closest thing to a perfect Marvel movie that I've seen to this point. The inclusion of everyone was great. It makes you laugh, makes you cry, makes you feel all the feels. It was just fun all around. Watching it for the second time, I enjoyed it just as much as watching it the first time, and I'll probably watch it for a third time at some point soon too, because it's just fun as hell. And just a perfect Marvel experience. Loved it. A+.
I give it an A+++. I've said it. It is my favorite Marvel movie to date. Echoing they weaved it all together so well. So many characters, so many different concurrent events going on. The humor, like the serious moments, and it just fit together so well. There's so much room to make it disjointed or awkward or long, and they somehow found a way to pull it all together into a perfect, damn near perfect movie. And I might have said this to either of you before, but I like this movie so much. It's my go-to. I'm on a plane and need to watch something for 2 to 3 hours. I download it on my Surface, and this is the movie I watch anytime I air travel because I just love it that much.
That's awesome.
Even though it ends horribly and it's dark as hell and it's the saddest one to date, I think it's the best, most well-made Marvel movie to that date.
All right, well, that wraps it. We got 3 guys who really like this movie, and Andy,
and have spent 3.5 hours talking about it.
I think we spent some time pooping.
Yeah, there was a poop break in there. Y'all didn't hear that, but let us know what you think of this episode, fans. Should we bring Andy back for episode 20? Is this going to be a thing now? Let us know. Let us know if you liked him or if you hated him and never want to hear from him again.
Yeah, just don't copy him on those let us knows. So that then those just to us. Yeah.
No, it's been fun. I'm really glad you guys invited me on. You said at the beginning, I have been listening. I'm a loyal listener. I will confess I'm not fully caught up, only because I can't half listen to podcasts. I need to fully invest my time in them. and it's hard to carve out a couple hours at a time. I can't flip it on and work at the same time because I wouldn't pay attention to either. So I am a little behind on your guys' musings. So I do want to catch up, but I'm super honored and thankful you had me on because I think I'm close to a big MCU dork as Bryan. I might not be on the level because I don't have the comic book experience necessarily, but I'm super grateful that you added me because I got to talk about my favorite movie with two other people that enjoy it just as much as I do. So thank you.
Awesome. Well
Thanks
said,
for joining
sir.
us. It was great. Yeah, thank you. Next up, Ant-Man and the Wasp. That's episode 20.
Holy cow, we're going to be hitting episode 20. And
All
hopefully
right.
we'll do it soon here. We apologize for the lapse in time, but when you're trying to arrange a podcast for 3 people, you get the complications of 3 people that come with it. So thanks for listening. We'll see you all soon. Peace out.
Out.